ConTech looks at the advantages and downside of technological innovation in a world that is becoming increasingly dependent on new digital technologies. Every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
Ima na wendo mwingi tukikuthokia Embu County, the land of opportunities. Kambunene ya Ngemi FM mushi worata.
Tuigagure na kamwetha kama vyumeto. Muroro kiande tukunye maire na murori tuthie thokore besa mivukore cha
manje makiyara uranje muri cietu cia thitima na ronje rwathagana nyamu cia kithaka igitugemeria bururi wetu wa mbere Embu County. Ngemi FM tikomono tukianirira na mugambo munene eno ni
Ngemi FM
musie wa urata
eno ni nyumba nene
musie wa urata
Ngemi FM 103.5.
Mambo gani haya? Mambo kama mtu mfupi kama kitunguu. Anaona round mwangalie.
Sasa huyu amenitoa kwa samba kuja kunitrip na naniweka alafu kuna watu.
Umakasereka? Chega,
No, stakabadhi ya kupita kwa airport kama una travel.
Sema turubena nyakiradio.
Luvena.
Nyakiradio.
Nyakilalo.
Kabisa sasa mimi nataka ile nguo. Ukishaivaa, nataka na kurekodi kwa video napiga Vivian, sio that the concern. Wajui eh?
Shauri gani wewe na nyatia natoka kama na nyemelea.
Tembea. Nene.
Brand new week. It is the 17th day of February, and we as the Good Morning Kenya team are in to ensure that we get to let you know everything that has been happening around across the country. There is a lot that we have in store for you today. Remember, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga got to lose the AUC seat. So just what way forward for the Right Honorable Raila Odinga? How is this likely to change the political landscape of this country? We know of the broad-based government, which is what is in power right now, or rather what is happening politically right now. We have the broad-based government. Is this something that we are expecting to change? Will Raila Odinga still be up for that specific way of being part of the government, or will we have to see him have a change of heart concerning that? There are so many questions that are raising from that loss, and I'm sure that we are going to be tackling some of that today on our political segment. And aside from that, today being a Monday, we have decided that we are going to be doing things a bit differently. We're going to be tweaking our family check segment, making it better just for you. Yes, we will be having a conversation on do women forgive and forget, and it's going to be an all-round conversation. I will be having 3 people as my panelists. We'll have Duncan Juma, who is a life coach. We'll also have Njeri Ndaru, who is a counseling psychologist and a growth coach. We'll also be having Reverend Bernard Akama, who is the CEO and senior pastor for the Sound of Abundance Church. We want to have that conversation. I'm sure it's going to be a good one, so you better stay tuned for that. Mike? Good morning, and how was your weekend?
My weekend was good, and good morning to you. And you have a very interesting question, and that is a segment I will be looking forward to tune into. Aside from that, on Saturday, yes, all eyes were in Addis Ababa, where the AUC elections were happening, and Djibouti carried the day. And as Vivian has said, a lot of questions now regarding politics within the country, and also Kenya's foreign policy arise. We're going to see a shift in Kenya's foreign policy, and also what or how are the relations between Kenya and other African nations going to be. Those are some of the questions that emerge from Saturday's event. And now today we are going to look at something different. We're going to look at regulatory frameworks, especially within matters to do with water access to save water, and also affordability of this commodity. I'll be having acting CEO of Water Services Regulatory Board, that is Richard Cheriot, who will be joining me here in Good Morning Kenya to talk about this and more. Good morning, Marie.
Well, a very good morning to you, Mike, and also Vivian. From wherever you're joining us, my name is Marie Yambo, and definitely I'll bring you up to speed with what is happening as far as the news is concerned. The AUC, vote is what is going to be dominating our bulletin this morning, including the fact that the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, says that, the Kenya's diplomatic standing remains solid despite the AUC loss. And Kenya's AUC chairmanship candidate, that's the former candidate, Raila Odinga, says he is content with what happened in Addis. I'll be bringing you up to speed with all that. But before that, there's someone back in the studio. Happy New Year to you, Victor.
Happy New Year. No, don't. I know you're going to take it so lightly, but you said leave Wisha.
Yeah.
I said we talk.
Hey, if you could talk, I think you're waiting for this day for so many years.
Sema ikutoka Marie.
Yeah, nimesha sema imenitoka. Leave Wisha, Victor.
Marie, oui.
Happy New Year.
But karibu sana.
Happy New Year,
good to have you back.
All of you.
Great to have you back on set. It's been a long time.
I know.
Yeah.
Yani hata unakumbuka bado? You know how we do it here, or should we take you through some things?
You need some orientation.
Some tutorial.
Yeah,
at some point, I almost went to Mayenga, to Namimo, because I'm used to that. You understand?
Yeah.
But you all look good. It seems like all of you had some good time during Valentine's. You disappeared for 2 days.
Oh, really?
Well, no comment.
Well.
Okay. I see. Good to see you, and thank you so much for you, everyone, for tuning in to Good Morning Kenya. Of course, happy to be back. Live Wisha. I can tell you. It's hot. At some point, it'll be cold. But hey, some of us have no option, and we have to be back. I'll get to have some tutorials on how to do this.
Yeah, don't worry, I got you.
Vivian, Mike, Marie, I need some manual.
We got you.
But I'll try.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. At exactly 7, we'll be talking about what my colleagues have said. We all know what really happened in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and that is what I want us to break down for the next 1 hour and 30 minutes for us just to understand what is really now at play as we move forward as a nation. Was it Raila Odinga who lost, or was it Kenya, or was it East Africa? But still, Djibouti is in East Africa. But people will still ask themselves, was it Raila Odinga or Kenya? Let's unpack that at exactly 7. But right about now, Marie to give us the updates in the news bulletin. Marie.
Indeed, just to make a comment on that, I don't know. I always feel like where there is competition, there is always, okay, fine, we know there's a loser and a winner, but I always feel like it's a win-win situation. Because if you look at the votes, they were not really far apart. I mean, how many countries supported Kenya, and like you said, Djibouti is still part of East Africa. And I also feel like Kenyans, maybe we did not know much about the AU and its organization and all that, but this particular, exercise made us, pay attention and understand that there are different, can I say, beg your pardon, there are different facets to it. So for me, I think still a win-win. I don't know. What do you think? But anyway, Let's get to the news, where Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi says Kenya's diplomatic standing remains solid despite the AUC loss. Mudavadi says Kenya remains undistracted by speculation that the Anglophone and Francophone fault lines could have handed Kenya the defeat. Despite widespread lobbying by the government, Kenya's candidate Raila Odinga lost to Djibouti's Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, a closely contested Saturday vote in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Reacting from the loss that saw former Prime Minister Raila Odinga lose to Djibouti's Mohamed Yusuf for the African Union Commission chair, the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi says Kenya remains unbowed.
We don't want to procrastinate. We are not bitter. We are a Kenyan nation, a member of the AU, participating in the process. And Honorable Raila put up a very good fight in this contest. He didn't win, but he has been very democratic and come forward himself to say, let us move on. This chapter is now closed.
He dismissed speculation that the Francophone and Anglophone politics were at play in Saturday's election.
We are not in the business of dividing Africa on the basis of Anglophone and Francophone, or the other one, Russophone, which is the Portuguese direction. We are in the business of talking Africaphone.
Mudavadi further dismissed that Kenya's position on the DRC crisis may have influenced the outcome.
If you go back into the annals of history, you'll find President Jomo Kenyatta talking about it. The same issue. Jomo Kenyatta talking about the same DRC challenge. Nyerere spoke about it. Mbeki spoke about it. Surely, do you think that the DRC challenge has come to the table because of Raila's candidacy? Or because President Ruto is the president today? In fact, you missed an issue. President Kagame said that this issue is even older than himself.
Meanwhile, the Kenyan delegation accompanying the former premier says Odinga's loss is a dent on Africa's reform bid. They, however, say this loss could see him return to the country to shepherd national conversations.
Of the three candidates on the ballot, Kenya's Raila Amolo Odinga emerged as the front-runner in the first 2 rounds of voting. However, after 6 rounds, and in a spirit of Pan-African unity, he chose to step down, recognizing that after 7 rounds without an outright winner, one securing at least 2/3 of the votes, the election was likely to be deferred, possibly to the next summit.
We were very hopeful for a win because we knew the kind of candidate that we had presented to Africa. We knew that Africa would have benefited immensely from Prime Minister Raila's experience, wisdom, and so many things that he's resolute about in his public life.
We are still very proud of Baba, and we know that Baba still has a lot to offer in Africa and beyond. And so we just say congratulations, Baba.
There have been a lot of factors, but it has nothing to do with the competence of our candidate. His credentials are there for everyone to see, but the delegates, they chose a different candidate.
And on the final day of the 38th ordinary session of the African Union, President William Ruto chaired the Committee of the African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change.
I take this opportunity to heartily congratulate Musa Ali for his election as the new chairperson of the African Union Commission.
President Ruto expressed fear that the withdrawal of the United States government from the Paris Agreement would be a setback to climate cooperation and financing.
Despite these changes and challenges, Africa must remain proactive, defend multilateralism, and demand the fulfillment of international obligations. The submission of new nationally determined contributions.
And former Africa Union Commission chairmanship candidate Raila Odinga has said that President William Ruto did everything in his power to support him in his bid. According to Odinga, allegations that his candidature was designed to humiliate him are unfounded. He said that he came up with the idea to run for the seat, and President Ruto vowed to support him.
We accept the results, and I've congratulated my competitor who has won, and I wish him the best. So there will be a lot of blame games that are going to be played. And people are going to say, oh, it is because, Baba did not do as much as he expected. Oh, it's because Baba is now tired, because he's too old. All sort of things. That maybe because those people used more money than they used. Oh, Ruto just wanted to humiliate Baba. It was not genuine in saying that he was supporting him and so on and so forth. But I made the decision myself and announced that I wanted to run for this position myself. Ruto only came and said he was going to support me. That President Ruto did everything possible. He gave me all the logistical support that we needed. And therefore I will not regret it. I will walk with my head tall.
And President William Ruto is challenging the global community to unite in combating the climate crisis, warning that its continued effects pose an existential threat to humanity. Speaking while chairing the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change at the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia, President Ruto further expressed concern that the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement could hinder international cooperation and climate financing.
A day after the end of the election of the Africa Union Commission chairperson in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, President William Ruto was on Sunday morning the host of a summit of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change at the Africa Union headquarters. Addressing delegates at the meeting, the president lauded the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat for agreeing to support the implementation of the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative.
Allow me also to commend the government of Tanzania for successfully hosting Mission 300 event in Dar es Salaam last month. This initiative aims to accelerate Africa's energy access by 2030, and I urge this forum to endorse its outcome.
He, however, emphasized that the climate summit crisis continues to pose an existential threat to humanity, urging the global community to unite in combating the challenge. The president also faulted the withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement.
The withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement and the rise of far-right leadership in key economies could prove a major obstacle to climate cooperation and financing. Moreover, 2024 was the first year the world breached the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, a stark warning with unpredictable consequences.
Meanwhile, President Ruto confirmed Kenya's readiness to host the second biannual African Climate Summit later this year.
If there is a country that is willing to host, it is okay with us. If there is none, Kenya will be happy to host the second Africa Climate Summit.
Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki says Kenya came out stronger despite losing the African Union Commission chairmanship to Djibouti's Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. Speaking during the installation and induction ceremony of Reverend Stephen Mawira, the Bishop-elect of the Methodist Church of Kenya, Nkubu Synod, in Meru County, Kindiki noted that the country gained over 20 allies in the continent who voted in favor of Kenya's candidate in the AUC.
Following the outcome of the African Union Commission chairmanship in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on Saturday, Leaders in the country continue to weigh in on the outcome that saw Kenya lose the African Union Commission chairmanship to Djibouti's Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki, leading the charge, noted that the outcome made Kenya even stronger.
And even if we do not succeed, I think we came out strongly because we got the support of over 20 African nations, 20 African presidents, more than 20 actually voted for our candidates.
Speaking during the installation and induction ceremony of Reverend Stephen Mawera, the Bishop-elect of the Methodist Church of Kenya, Nkobo Synod in Meru County. The second-in-command further urged President William Ruto and the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga to continue working together.
We just want to ask that the President and the former Prime Minister and all the leaders will continue working together to build the unity of Kenya, secure peace and stability for our country, the same way we were working together in that project, even if we didn't succeed.
Meanwhile, Kindiki has called leaders from the region for a developmental meeting on Tuesday to discuss the progress of projects within the region.
Ambayo yalikuwa yamekwama kidogo, barabara zingine zilikuwa zimekwama, miradi ya maji ilikuwa imekwama, lakini uchumi sasa umeanza kuimarika. And I want to promise you, we will revive all the stalled projects in Meru County.
To matters education now, where Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migosi Ogamba has assured schools that the delayed capitation funds will be released this week, attributing the delay to pressing national commitments. Speaking during the launch of a book marking 60 years since the establishment of Kereri Girls High School, Ogamba clarified that 25% capitation disbursement was part of the 50% allocation for the first term. Now, the Ministry of Education has allocated 19 billion shillings in capitation for this financial year, distributed in a 50, 30 and 20% ratio for the 3 terms. His comments come amid concerns from school principals regarding inadequate allocations.
Capitation for schools is released on a 50, 30, 20 percentage. First term 50%, second term 30%, and third term 20%. Of the 50% that was supposed to be released this term, for secondary schools we've released 25% of that portion. So there's another 14 or 15 billion that is pending, and that figure is going to be released next week to the teachers. So they do not need to worry because the government in the first term is normally a bit tricky because of the many commitments that the government has, and because of that we were able only to release it in bits. We first released 19 billion, then we released 14 billion, and another 14 billion is going to be released this coming week.
To matters security, where the body of an unknown man was recovered in a maize plantation along the Murang'a Road in Murang'a County. The residents believe the man was murdered in a different location and his body transported to the scene. The residents claim insecurity cases have been rampant in the area, and they're blaming police of laxity over the rising insecurity in the area.
The residents of Maragua in Murang'a County are living in fear. They say they are apprehensive about their safety and that of their children, following increased cases of murder, rape, sodomy, and theft in the area. On Sunday morning, an unknown man was found murdered and his body dumped in a maize plantation along Murang'a Maragua Road.
Tumepata mzee ameuliwa mali karibu na residential mali watu wanakaa, na ni siku 2 after mtoto alirepiwa.
Huyu mama tumesimama na yeye hapa, mtoto wake alichinjwa 2 months ago.
Tumepata mtu ameuliwa hapa Sofra Highway, like a half kilometer, ameuliwa na hajajulikana.
The horrific incident comes just a few days after a 3.5-year-old Elizabeth Wamaitha was defiled and brutally murdered by unknown people, with a post-mortem report indicating she was hit on the head with a blunt object and died instantly. Cases of insecurity are on the rise in Murang'a County, with residents now calling for a complete overhaul of police officers in Maragua Police Station. They have blamed the police of sleeping on their job, despite numerous pleas by residents to the police to arrest the situation.
Sisi Maragua tunaomba tu security. Hakuna kitu ingine.
Tunaomba tu serikali tuweke tu security. Kwetu kumeibiwa kuku 7. 2 weeks. Sunday baba mwingine akasodomaiziwa na hapa. Tunaomba tu serikali tuangalie.
A Chinese investor in Kenya is seeking justice following a business deal that went sour. Gui Panpan claims she was conned by a Kenyan in a business involving the export of goat meat to Saudi Arabia. Chinese national says she has been sending money to the local business partner, Beatrice Mwanza, only to find out that she neither purchased nor shipped the meat to Saudi Arabia. She's calling upon the Kenyan authorities to intervene in the matter.
This is something from Dubai client. She faked the air cargo center, the paper from air cargo center. You know, she said we send this by air, but she faked that paper, and she faked the sea paper by from Musk shipping line. She faked the transaction from Dubai. We have some WhatsApp group. We have 2 WhatsApp group with the 2 Dubai clients inside. One is like get order by air, one is get order by sea. I talk pages with the client, all faked. We just need our money back. We want to do some genuine business, hard work, genuine business. I've never dealt with fraudsters before or criminals like this.
A look at sports now. The Kenya Ice Stock Sport International team will report to residential camp on the 20th of this month, 10 days before their trip to Austria for the World Championship. The team has been beefing up their training before reporting to the camp next week.
Dennis Decha Wanjala. Jaza mchungi langoni. Eric Naman Balesho Bubbles. Kipata sasa nafasi. Bryson Jore Mwangai. Jaza ndani kule. Kwenda kuileta, ameupiga kofi Alpha Kristo Nyango. Sharif Musa Sirengo, anaingia bado Sharif. SM7, leta ndani kule, anakachao ya nje. Alpha Kristo Nyango tena. Kaenda kucheza box, yupo Dennis Siguma ba. Kupokea mpira ya pili, analeta ndani huku. Achari ile. Wanakoso hapa.
Maxwell Mujese Mulili. Inapigwa ndefu huku. Anapambana Dennis Okota nayo. Okota! He missed the sitter. Okota Dennis amepewa tena. Amenyanyua kwake Mishira sasa. Mishira amekatawa nyika tena. Wapo wawili, pigaji ni nani?
Now, the 2 FKF Premier League matches that played yesterday both ended in goalless draws. Gor Mahia drew 0-0 with Tusker FC, while Shabana also played to a goalless draw with Mathare United. Tusker remained second on 39 points, 2 points behind leaders Kenya Police, while Gor Mahia are third on 35 points. Shabana's 1 point leaves them 8th on 29 points as their opponents Mathare United sit 14th on 22 points.
Upiga kofi Alpha Kristo Nyango. Sharif Musa Sirengo, anaingia bado Sharif. SM7, leta ndani.
Well, that's where we end the bulletin this morning. Thank you once again always for your time and your company. My name is Mariambo. My colleague Victor Olo will be up next with Eye on Politics, taking in stock all that happened on Saturday at the AUC votes. See you tomorrow.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't Don't worry, Studio Machinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Machinani, Radani Talent.
No fancy meals anymore when our son is not at home?
I don't mean to bother you. I have something to ask you.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did you know my home address?
If she doesn't retake or do the makeup exam, she might not be able to graduate. I'm so anxious and I don't know what to do, and I suddenly thought of you.
Students are all wasting their time.
They're young. Young people's time is for wasting. Challenge the limit.
The HIV epidemic in Kenya began gaining attention in the early 1980s. By the 1990s, the virus had spread rapidly, leading to a national health crisis. At its peak, the adult prevalence rate was among the highest in the world. Today, Kenya has made remarkable progress. The adult prevalence rate has decreased significantly, but the virus still affects millions. Approximately 1.6 million people live with HIV, and the challenge remains to ensure access to treatment and prevention for all. In rural regions, accessing care can be difficult. Innovative approaches like mobile clinics and community health workers are bridging gaps in service delivery. Shining Hope for Communities SHOFCO, a grassroots movement based in Nairobi, Kenya, in urban slums, is providing services, community advocacy platforms, education, and leadership development for women and girls. Despite this, SHOFCO is also aimed at providing quality primary healthcare and healthcare education in slums communities where the prevalence of waterborne diseases, malaria and HIV, which is on the rise.
In general, our approach in terms of health service provision is that we are working on two aspects. The first aspect is the community health strategy, and then now the secondary part of it, which is now services at facility level.
In Kibra, the prevalence of HIV is significantly higher than the national average. Limited access to healthcare, coupled with high levels of stigma and misinformation, exasperates the crisis, but SHOFCO has come to bridge this by providing medical care.
My name is Efi Onditi. I'm a clinical officer and a clinic coordinator in SHOFCO Chandaria Clinic. It's one of the SHOFCO clinics. We have two currently. We have the services that we provide in the clinic include family planning, we have primary health care, we have laboratory pharmacy services. Also we have a CCC which deals with HIV patients and TB patients.
Counseling and support groups play a critical role in helping individuals affected by HIV. In Kibra, community health workers are on the front lines offering not just medical care, but emotional support and education.
We usually give these clients TCAs monthly, or when a client is diagnosed, we will initiate them on drugs depending on whether the client is ready. If they are not ready, we cancel the clients first until when they are ready. So we do baseline investigations, then we start monitoring them on a 2-weekly basis. Then depending on how the client is faring on, we progress them to a month, then after every 3 months. Others will even give them TCAs of up to 6 months.
Two residents from Kibra, Susan Ligare and Bernard Owino, have come out proudly to speak about their HIV status and how they are mobilizing the community to get tested and know their status.
Niligundua tarehe 12 mwezi wa 4 2017, na vile niligundua Si mara ya kwanza nilienda hospitali tu kale ka chemist, nikaenda kupimwa. Sasa ile hali ilifanya nikaenda kupimwa ile herpes. Nilikuwa na herpes kwa mwili. Sasa ndio huyo daktari akanituma kwa Shofco. Nienda nitipiwe huko. Kufika kule nikapata niko na virusi. Si kufa moyo. Nikaingia nikapimwa, tukatanisha na huyo daktari, lakini nikamwambia lazima utanipima na utanipa result zangu. Nikapimwa, ijapokuwa haikuwa rahisi, lakini nilikubali yote sababu ilikuwa imeshanipata. Nikatipiwa na nikapimwa, nikapata HIV positive, nikachukupali. Hiyo siku ndio nilianza kutumia dawa yangu hiyo tarehe 12 mwezi wa 4 2017. Mpaka leo ningali natumia dawa zangu.
Nilijua kwa kupimwa, hali ya HIV nikapimwa, nikapatikana niko na virusi. Nilipimwa 2016 mwezi wa 10. Nikapatikana niko na virusi. Immediately nikaenroll kwa dawa. Nikaanza kumeza dawa, mpaka sasa hivi naendelea kumeza dawa. Na wakati ya kwanza dawa kwa mara kwanza kulikuwa na changamoto za kawaida za dawa zilikuwa nazo. Kuna effects kidogo ambayo ilikuwa inaleta mwili kwa sababu hazikuwa zimezoea mwili. Sasa kuna wakati ilikuwa inaleta shida kidogo, lakini nirudi nikazoea nikaenda dawa mpaka sasa naendelea kwa dawa.
Despite advancements, stigma and discrimination remain significant barriers. Many people living with HIV face a lot of fear to know about their status, which can deter them from seeking testing and treatment.
Doing a lot of advocacy through our community health promoters and also the support groups that we are conducting.
It's positive, mostly on the factor of females. On the male, we are still struggling because you'll find when you diagnose a female client, you encourage them to bring their spouses.
Cost between Kenya shillings 27 or between 27 and 30 billion annually. And owing to a decline in donor support, the funding gap now stands at US dollars 11.7 million. The government is committed to progressively increase domestic funding in order to sustain the gains made so far in partnership with PEPFAR.
The journey to overcoming HIV in Kenya is ongoing. It is a story of struggle, resilience, and unwavering hope.
95% of the population have been tested. Out of the 95% that have been tested and turned out positive, 95% of them to be initiated on treatment. Those initiated on treatment, 95% of them, we make sure that they are virally suppressed.
All right, welcome back. It's now 9 minutes past 7 a.m. Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. Let's talk about what is happening in the country and across our borders, of course, continentally as well. But first of all, allow me to thank Mike Migwi for sitting and standing in for me while I was away. That was a job well done. Mike, you deserve, yeah. All right.
A toast.
Wakili says he deserves a toast. We will do something about it. Thank you so much for that. All right, so we all know what really happened in the country, actually in the continent over the weekend. It's been in our lips for a couple of months, and finally the curtain came down on Saturday in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. That has got a lot of political intonation in as far as our country is concerned, and that is why I really want us to get into it to crunch some of these issues that is affecting us. It's not the first time that Kenya is losing. I'm talking about Kenya. I'm not talking about Raila Odinga, because the second time that Kenya was actually fielding a candidate was during that election. Remember, Ambassador Amina Mohamed also contested, and she also lost more or less the same manner or style that it went on Saturday. So I really want us to take a look at that and really to understand what are some of the hits and misses in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? And where do we continue to get it right and wrong in each and every election? My guests, who are all able, are here. I have got Ishmael Nyaribo, who is an advocate of the High Court, already on set, and Daktari Ambassador Richard Bosiri, who is a lecturer of political science at the University of Nairobi. I got it right, Doctor.
Yeah, for the second time.
I'm a good student. I am a good student. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante sana. I'm still waiting for Professor Alfred Omenya, who is a principal researcher and a consultant, and David Alulu, who is a political analyst, to join me shortly. But we have to keep this on the road. I hope it's still good enough to say Happy New Year, because we've not seen each other this year.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to us.
You're well?
Yes.
Asante sana. Daktari, you're well as well?
I'm good. Happy New Year to you.
Asante sana. What really happened in Addis Ababa? Daktari, what happened?
I guess many things happened in Addis Ababa. One of the things what we see physically or visibly is that we lost Kenya as a country. We lost to Djibouti in that contest. So there could be many reasons to explain this.
Yes.
But generally speaking, we did our best, but we are not able to. And that's democracy. You know, in a democracy, you have to accept the results of elections, and we are quick to concede and accept. And I hope we will continue to support the AU and participate fully in the initiatives of the AU, the implementation, for example, the implementation of AU 2063 agenda, the Africa we want. The AU has its plate full. So Mahmoud Yusuf has to put the house in order and bring everyone on board for Africa to shine and to be able to serve its people more effectively.
You know, it's either said, when you say that is democracy, but a majority of people did not take it lightly. More specifically supporters. And even Kenya itself. Wakili.
Yeah, I think they should take it lightly. They should not overread these things. I mean, what happened in Addis is people voted, and they voted for Mahmoud Yusuf. They did not vote for Raila Odinga. They did not vouch for Kenya. They vouched for Djibouti. So as far as I'm concerned, it shows that the peers, the presidents of fellow African nations, were not interested in voting Kenya and Raila. They were interested in voting Djibouti and Mohammed. Though Djibouti is a smaller nation, I really do not think that they liked to vote for a smaller nation. But probably this takes us back to the people who are campaigning for the Kenyan team and Prime Minister Raila Odinga, in terms of, were they really campaigning for him? You know, when you look at the likes of Aden Duale and the Kenya spy chief going to, you know, Addis Ababa to put in quote-unquote support so that Raila Odinga can win, were these people really campaigning for Raila Odinga, or they were campaigning for their nomadic colleague from Djibouti? I mean, you know, these people, they have relatives all the way in Djibouti, all the way in Somalia, in all these countries. So these are some of the questions that I think Kenya will be debating. But as to what happened, Victor, clearly there was a voting, and the peers decided we like Mohammed more than Raila Odinga. So in other words, in a club of equals, people come together.
What do you mean the peers?
I mean, it was presidents who were voting.
Yes.
The colleagues at that level. much as President William Ruto was campaigning all around, they still did not actually give him a nod. They instead gave a nod to both candidates who are not presidents themselves. You know, Raila Odinga is former prime minister, and the other guy was a foreign affairs minister. But who was voting? It's presidents who are voting, and William Ruto was very emphatic. In fact, in Kenyan media houses, we always saw what President Ruto was doing for Raila Odinga. We were not shown what Djibouti was doing for its people. We were not shown what Zimbabwe, Madagascar, isn't it, was doing for their candidates. So we all along, our minds were made to believe that Raila Odinga was the front runner. But then, I mean, it shows that the presidential grouping do not necessarily respect our president that much. They respect him definitely, but they do not have that trust so that they can do everything possible to vote for Raila Odinga. If you look at the first voting, and you look at the second one, and you look at the third voting, there were chances for Raila to win. By
and
all
then
means,
all of a sudden it started to stagnate.
Yeah, if they liked Kenya so much, and I think I have to correct you on that one. No, the African nations like Kenya, by the way, whether it's by sheer, political involvement, debates, or tourism, or medical tourism. Kenya is liked, but I think there was a thing about how the president campaigned, and probably these people didn't like it. Look at Rwanda, they did not attend. Why? Look at Uganda, our immediate neighbor. In fact, Museveni was the first person to be visited in these campaigns, and he did not attend. So there, and then look at the statement by Yusuf immediately after elections. I mean, when our president said Africa has lost a very important person, and that was reported by a local media here. How is Mohammed coming into the country to listen to a local station and then make a very derogatory remark that Africa got the best? And I mean, those issues you have in domestic and internal issues, it should not have affected, and they were not going to be allowed to affect, Africa as a whole. So there were so many dynamics, but let me just bring it down to, it was a contest, and Raila Odinga lost. And I think it's normal in any contest for any contest.
I think you're putting it right, because intelligence had to be at play at this particular point. We also have our intelligence boss with the president there, so probably was also getting briefed on how this was happening.
I think, Victor, we have been in that space for a while. I teach international relations. I was ambassador to UNESCO, immediate former ambassador to UNESCO.
Yes.
And our country's stature is high. Kenya participates really well and is respected in the international system or in international agencies, including a multilateral agency like AU. But there is one thing that I've learned over time, that there must be mutual respect among countries. We have no smaller and a bigger country, and theoretically we say all sovereign states are equal. That's why we have equal votes. Our equal vote, the vote of Djibouti, the vote of Kenya is one, and they carry the same weight. So what I see in what happened is not necessarily the internal issues in our country, the way we campaigned. Of course, they could have been a factor. But there are many, many more factors if we look at it. One I would like to point out is that there is usually reciprocity in international politics. If you rub another nation or nations in the wrong way, actually they keep this in what I call the record of remembrance. The bad things I put in the record of remembrance, they will always revisit at some point. They will always revisit. There are many issues I can give as examples. Why did Amina Mohammed lose?
Correct.
I thought we should have learned lessons. But I think our diplomats paid no attention They did not see. In fact, if you check the figures, Amina Mohammed's contest was actually stronger. Was stronger if you check it, because I could give you the figures. She started with 16, then Faki was 14, but there were other candidates. There were two other candidates. One from, again, small country called Equatorial Guinea, which is the only country in Africa that speaks Spanish.
Equatorial cannot be small from their reputation now.
In football, maybe, or something. but when you compare Kenya, and I'm not saying this to demean Equatorial Guinea. It's a nation state. It's a sovereign state. Very beautiful country.
2 million people.
Yeah, about 2 million people. I've gone to Malabo. I know the place. I've met even the president, Mbasogo. That's besides the point. But what I'm trying to say, Equatorial Guinea had a candidate. Botswana had a candidate at that time. South Africa had asked, or Southern Africa had requested, because Dlamini Zuma said, I'm not running for the second time. Southern Africa said, it's our turn. Can we do a second term? Botswana was there, which meant that Botswana from Southern Africa should have been given a chance at that time. What did we do? We fielded Amin Mohamed. Faki also came in. And those things people do not forget. Again, they consult the record of remembrance that Kenya did that to South Africa at that time. Now, not South Africa, Southern Africa. Now, when Southern Africa shifted the support to Madagascar, I could see clearly that, like, it's payback time. That was what I was thinking. It's payback time. Why should Southern Africa support us wholly? What is our relationship between what's the relation between Kenya and Botswana, Kenya and Namibia, Kenya? It's a good relationship, but even with South Africa. But then, at that multilateral level, people are looking at their interest and saying, who shall we support? Who will do the work that we want to be done more effectively? There is also need for fairness. Why are we perennial candidates in this? We should have done our intelligence. Yes, we should have collected our intelligence. It is possible. I'm taking this as
is there anything wrong with that?
A patriotic citizen of that country. There is nothing wrong, but there is something that you get in return. Because people will review us. I've been in the UNESCO. We won our elections, all our elections last 2023, because we could discuss and say, as Africa, what do we go for? What should Kenya go for? What should Nigeria go for? What should South Africa go for? In fact, I will tell you that Kenya dropped its candidature for the external auditor of UNESCO because Ms. Gazungu, the Auditor General, Kenya, and the lady from South Africa, again from the Commonwealth, both of them were going to meet in an election which had many other candidates, Philippines, Chile, and other places, and we would have lost. So we said as a country, let us withdraw our candidature and allow South Africa to go. And she won by 3 votes. So that reciprocity is very important. We figure out who should go for what. That's why I'm answering your question. Why is it wrong to go for it? I mean, you can go for it, but you lose. Diplomacy keeps those records.
Let me get from Prof. Prof, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Hearing from the two gentlemen, they've just set the stage running. My question to them was, what really happened in Addis Ababa? I mean, yes, what happened?
We lost.
I don't think Kenya lost. Kenyans did not lose.
We were the best. That's why.
Yes.
All right.
Do I think I agree with what with the sentiments of what I'm hearing, and I would actually want to start from where Dr. Busiri has had it. Incidentally, we may think that this African Union positioning is very unique. It's not. Kenya's played quite a bit of this sort of politics, both within government and outside of government. I'll give you an example. Not within government, not the same caliber, but same type of politics. We currently have in our body, the architects, the current Commonwealth president is Kenyan. But how was that played? And that's why what Dr. Busira is saying here is, you know, we should really pay attention to it if we are serious about winning these positions in the future. We presented Steve Oundo more than 10 years ago as he was to be president. But then we didn't just, you know, we went there, we pushed, and then at the right time we said, no. Actually, we shall support a candidate from Pakistan, on condition that they would support us for vice president, not even president, in the second. After 4 years. So of course, come 4 years. The UK was going for the presidency. We again, you know, tactically, we played, we went for the president, same candidate, and it was all politics. Then we withdrew our president, again, a second time round, supported the UK, on condition that they now support our candidate for vice president. And Pakistan, whom we were already invested in, you know, was very happy to support us for vice president.
Yes.
So we had a vice president, and during that time, we had a deal with the UK and said, look here, next round, you will support us for president, because we've tried twice. The truth of the matter was that we're not even trying. We were sort of negotiating within that global system. And come last year, in fact, the Kenyan candidate was not even Kenyan. It was the UK candidate. It was a Pakistan candidate. It was an African candidate, and we won. So this whole idea of reciprocity is key in international diplomacy, whether we like it or not. That is how that politics is played. It is not trying and trying. If you keep trying, you'll keep failing. As it were, these are negotiations within blocks, and that's partly why when it comes to African politics, our friends at the north, the West Africans, the Arabs, they tend to do better. Because I've been at the African Union, actually. I was running the climate change unit there, working directly under the former chair, John Ping. You could actually see these guys spend all their time and energies in playing regional politics and regional blocks and horse trading and so on, even on issues, not just on elections. And it becomes very easy for their issues to go through, because normally they've done a lot of you know, canvassing, a lot of horse trading. They're saying, well, yes, we'll back you on this, you back us on this, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I think as we're taking stock, we should be asking ourselves, and Dr. Busira said something really, really powerful here. We should be asking ourselves, you know, how are we playing these particular politics? Was it wise for us, for example, to field Amina? And Amina got, in fact, if you check the pattern, it's exactly the same. And it doesn't matter whether you go until 6th round. You will not win it.
But I think it's because of how the whole of this, you know, the continent is segregated, and, you know, the voting blocks.
No, it is not the way the continent is segregated. It is the way international politics is played.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with the Anglophones. And
it has nothing. No. In fact, what we're seeing there was totally normal. Let me give you an example. Again, within that politics.
Okay.
Based on my own work there, we had a lot of issues and challenges about our position on climate change then. That is what I was working on. And the entire world, that wasn't just us, the entire world was actually waiting for this Africa's common position on climate change. And even within the continent, we couldn't agree. We were talking, Congo had their own priorities, which was the forest, Red and Red Plus. The guys in the north were talking about oil and so on. You know, then Kenya hadn't found oil. You know, then of course, the South Africans were talking about, you know, mitigation measures and things like that. So the continent itself was in shambles.
Yes.
Then, of course, the rest of the world were also waiting for us. They had their priorities, and they had wanted to see how this thing was going to be crafted. We did two things. Of course, there are a whole lot of things that we're trying to do. We did two things. One of the things that we put on the table for the first time, we created the CAOS, the Committee of African Heads of State on Climate Change, because we're saying this thing has to be dealt with at that level.
Okay.
It was becoming hot politics. It was linked now with peace and security and so on. So saying, yes, we need to figure out a way that the sovereigns can actually agree, create a platform And for the first time, we created actually a presidential platform within these negotiating structures. And of course, people were waiting for this big issue that would happen within that particular space. The next thing, you know, we looked at the issues. We tried to help the canvassing of the issues. We could not. And what we decided on, which really is what saved the day, we said, okay, fine. Why can't we say, since these are evolving positions, and yes, nobody is agreeing with everybody else, said, why can't we say that this African position will actually be a position determined in a platform that has been established somewhere in the future. So the point was, here we were, eventually we just said the African common position will be the earliest platform.
Let's take a break. You know, you all have your cups of tea.
Yes.
I don't have it. We are taking a break, and there is something that, gentlemen, you all agree with, is that in international relations, diplomacy can be quite painful at some point.
Correct.
And was Kenya supposed to field a candidate? How it all started? Obasanjo, president, came here. It all started as, you know, and all that.
Yeah, that is a fair.
All right. We'll be right back with more after this. Stay with us.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Machinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Machinani, rather than talent.
Mambo gani haya? Mambo kama mtu mfupi kama kitunguu. Unaona round mwangalie.
Sasa huyu amenitoa kwa samba kuja kunitrip na naniweka lafu kuna watu. Umakasereka?
Chega,
no, stakabadi ya kupita kwa airport kama una travel.
Sema turubena nyakerajo.
Luvena.
Nyakerajo.
Nyakelalu.
Kabisa, sasa mimi nataka ile nguo. Ukishaivaa, nataka na kurekodi kwa video na piga Vivian, so that the concern. Wajui, eh?
Sauri gani wewe na nyatia anatoka kama na nyemelea.
Technology has become a crucial part of our society. Without technological advancements, so much of our everyday lives would be drastically different. As technology develops, it strives to fulfill the changing needs of society. This means that technology exists to help us achieve the things that we wouldn't be able to achieve without it. Take on Tech looks at the advantages and downside of technological innovation in a world that is becoming increasingly dependent on new digital technologies. Every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
All right, welcome back. So we are all set. I also have my cup of coffee. So the show can now continue. Let me come back, Wakili. So we are all here. Based on what the two gentlemen have said, what would you add on that?
I must appreciate the dynamics they have brought into the whole debate, and I'm learning, and I really appreciate that. I've done a research on domestication of the international trade, of the the Information Technology Agreement, and I can identify with what you're saying, but love the details. I am more concerned about the knowledge that is presented through social media today and how other nations easily tap into their local politics. The way we have been handling this thing, the way it was decided that Raila Odinga will run, was it a Kenya decision or it was a Kenya Kwanza decision, you see? And I think when you look at the remark by the winner that you are trying to bring domestic politics to the African Union, that is what Kenyans identify with most. And that's why I made the remark that Kenyans did not lose. If you look at the social media in Kenya, it was awash with wishing Mohammed or other candidates well and not actually wishing Raila Odinga well. And Raila Odinga is a very respected person in our country, in fact. It is not easy to say we don't want Raila Odinga to win or to succeed. But you could see a lot of people reading malice or reading, mischief from the way William Ruto tapped Raila Odinga and not any other candidate for that matter, so that he can go to the African Union. And everybody felt here locally that the president is trying to do away with his main issues in the country, main challengers, main opponents, so that he can handle 2027 easily without much opposition. Now that has backfired. The question would be, are people still going, are we going to discuss African Union politics even?
Yeah.
Much as today we have to wrap up this, but are we going to look at the laws at African Union as a loss for Kenya or just a loss for William Ruto and Raila Odinga?
Yeah.
So Kenyans are not deeply hurt. They knew that the president was trying to do something so that it can be easier for him in 2027. And I will tell you this. You have not asked this, Victor, but I will tell you this as an extension. I see a situation where Raila Odinga will stand for presidency in 2027. It is not far-fetched. Raila has not reached his destination, so he's likely to stand. If he stands, the Kenya Kwanza Brigade are going to use these laws to say, oh, this guy, he loses everywhere, so why are you even paying attention to him? So this was a strategic scheme to ensure that Kenya Kwanza does not lose in the end of the day. I'm sorry, that's local politics. We were discussing African Union, but as intelligent minds, we must look across, we must look over the horizon. So in my view, Kenyans don't feel they lost. Kenyans think that actually it has turned out well. You can see Kalonzo is already saying, if you lose in the African Union, please come back. You can see Gachagua is saying, Kenya needs you more. So for us, I doubt we've lost. I think the person who has lost is William Ruto. And again, by the way,
yes,
it is difficult. It is difficult for Raila Odinga to play a second fiddle. There is no possibility that he's standing behind William Ruto because he's number two to him. No. Okay. He's there conveniently so that they can do political rearrangements.
In my pointers, in my bullets here, that was my question.
Oh, I see.
It was somewhere down part of the questionnaire. I don't know why. You have more
I must have tapped into your mind.
But, Dr. You've been in that space. How important is this loss?
This loss, I think, should...
For Kenya?
Yeah, should send our diplomats back to drawing board.
Exactly.
Yeah. How could we not know? I don't want to fault the intelligence. The diplomats in every country in Africa would have had the information.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Those in multilateral stations, for example, our ambassador to Paris or to UNESCO, they're both in Paris. They must have had, because all these countries are represented there. Correct. They must have had the Africa, Africa group meeting and discussed. When we were there, you'll be concerned that, Djibouti, we are from one region.
Yes, correct.
And we have 3 candidates. Why couldn't we internally agree and back one and do a rotation the next time? Or we trade for another position. When it comes up, then we back Madagascar, we back Kenya. Right. That is how it is played. So what I'm trying to say is that our diplomats must go back to drawing board. And the person who is supposed to think more seriously are those, the people, are those in foreign affairs, especially the PS and the minister, Salim Davidi.
What usually really happens in that room? Because to some extent, we'll just be asking questions here.
Right.
But you've been in that room for quite some time and you rub shoulders, with the like-minded people. What usually happens behind the scenes?
That is what perhaps is most important. When you are in that room, you can't campaign. I saw our president camaraderie, greeting, and at that point you can't change people's position. In fact, by that time you should have known that actually I have sufficient support. But again, I would like to caution that even when you have a written note verbal for support, that we shall support you during these elections, that is not an assurance. It's not 100%.
Correct.
So towards elections, you have to remind them, say, we have this reciprocal agreement that you are supporting me on this, we're going to support that. And that is done by diplomats, and reminding and visiting their offices and talking to the representatives at the AU in Addis Ababa, which is the work of the Kenya's ambassador to Ethiopia and AU, to do that groundwork and supply this information to Foreign Affairs. And of course, the president will be briefed on this.
Yes.
I guess they must have worked hard and done what they would have done, and they did. I had the PS saying we have done all that we were possibly to do in order to win this election. But there are many things that was not done. Why didn't we agree as a region who to support? This thing was coming to our region. Why didn't we agree? I would like to move forward and say also that our regional politics also might have affected us. We have had the Congo issue. We have had the Sudan issue. People are not talking about the Sudan issue. We are in IGAD. We are in the East African community. And all these countries fall into one or two regional groupings. There is no clear cut. You can't say, even when we talk about Francophone, Anglophone, Lusophone, all these countries actually do not behave the same way. Not that all Francophone countries have similar interests.
Yes.
They differ in terms of their interests as nation states, as sovereign states. So they don't band together for no reason. They can band together if they want to succeed in getting a position, as they did. And so when people argue that Francophony, the structural aspects of Africa is, no.
But to some extent it has an effect.
It has an effect. But look at Rwanda, for example. Rwanda is now English-speaking and French-speaking. Yeah. There are a number of countries in Africa that are both English.
The president was not there.
Of course. Why? Because, again, the regional politics.
We'll come back to that later on. When you look at that, Prof, listening to what Honorable Raila Odinga said yesterday in Addis, he said that we were sure of winning. But, of course, there were some other factors which were at play. What do you think are some of these factors? And, Dr. you'll also have to help me with some of these factors, and you, Akili. But as you also have your point of why was this loss important for Kenya?
Right.
Yeah.
I think Kenya needed to lose, really, if you had to ask me.
That's painful.
Yeah. There's the issue that when you're strong, when you're dominant, sometimes you need to be stopped so that, you can be able to play together with the rest. I think, and Dr. Bosir would agree with me, that Kenyan foreign policy, especially when it comes to African issues, has been wanting. Wanting, actually. Because what you see is Kenya's desires of the continent being pushed as the dominant policies. We've never seen a situation where Kenya runs with continental or even regional priorities as it actually were. And I can give endless examples. Look at our our influence in Haiti. Look at even our positions on say Gaza. Look at our even this little war here in DR Congo. You'd have expected that the Kenyan president would have said, look here, I've talked to my colleagues in SADC, I've talked to my colleagues in East African Community, but he said, I talked to Macron. Look at the position we took on Western Sahara, which was the first executive order that the president signed and was resigned it just in a couple of days, you know, recognizing Western Sahara. I was like, how do you make such goofs in, you know, in foreign policy? And there are very many issues. I mean, if you saw when Kenya was pushing the ICC, it was because we were affected directly. It was not necessarily that was Africa's priority and so on. So I think as a country, we need to ask, yes, there's some things that are important for us. And this is not something that started today. East African community, donkey years ago, when our neighbors were suffering, we took the coffee auction to Lake Victoria so that we could benefit from their suffering. When frost had hit Brazil, and Kenya benefited from Uganda's, you know, woes in Idi Amin's time.
Yeah.
Compare that to our neighbor, Tanzania, for example. And coincidentally, I mean, at the helm there, of course, that happened within the AU days. Tanzania's candidate sat at the apex of the African Union. You look at our neighbor Tanzania, on this one really, you'll give them a lot of credit that they've been able to empathize and to carry burdens of other peer countries and other regional countries better.
Yes.
Sometimes, you know, at a huge cost to themselves. Look at what Tanzania did, you know, with the liberation fights in Nyerere's time, you know, within the Southern African region. So I think we need to take a step back again and ask ourselves, you know, how do we want to shape our foreign policy, particularly when it comes to the African and regional issues? From where I sit, I don't think Kenya is doing enough. I think Kenya is largely selfish. Even AGOA, we went ahead and signed AGOA at some point when our neighbors here were pussyfooting. Let me use that.
Are you trying to say that Kenya is a continental bully?
There's a lot of unilateralism as far as the concerned.
Victor, I see President Ruto going to South Africa and opening up visa, and we are just, you know, hardly questioned. We just now go to South Africa, isn't it?
Correct.
We have direct flights to the United States.
Correct.
He's been doing a lot of diplomatic, you know, shuttle.
Correct.
And trying to talk with several presidents.
Yes.
He goes to Uganda, and Uganda reassures him. If Uganda did not reassure him, it did not refuse that it will support our candidate.
Correct.
So where is the mess? I think that is where, in our analysis and debate, we should, I mean, if you come to my house and I promise you,
the thesis I'm putting,
you see, if you come to my house and I promise you, and then you do the opposite.
I'm agreeing with you 100%, that we are very good at unilateralism. We are really not very good at driving collective agendas. We negotiate with South Africa very well. We negotiate with DR Congo very well. But we don't, when it comes, for example, to leading East African community properly, or talking, you know, with SADC, or looking at broader regional interests, say in the north, and so on. We tend to be quite weak with those. In fact, we don't even run with those agendas at all, leave alone identifying with them.
Okay. Okili, you want to continue?
No, I wanted us to see the stature we have as a nation vis-a-vis
that we have,
whether we employ, you know, what our policies are, foreign policies, to other nations, and whether we cement the relationship with our colleagues or with our peers. And it seems like we don't.
Unilateralism.
We don't,
you asked whether what we lost, you know, we have a reputation.
Correct.
Big reputation.
Correct.
Honestly, I will tell you that Kenya has a good reputation in the UN.
Correct.
In all international agencies.
And it's being spoiled. That's
now,
our worry.
the thing is, how do we guard against or protect? You know, the main aim of our foreign policy is to promote and protect our national interests.
Correct.
Reputational considerations are part of our national interests.
Correct.
So how do we do that? It's being cautious, and I'm saying that we must take a cautious approach to our diplomatic relations. I think recently we have been a bit uncareful, if that word exists. I'm trying to be a little more diplomatic. We are not very careful.
Correct.
For instance, what Dr. Menya raised on our statement on Gaza when the bombardment started after October 7, 2023. It was horrific. People were being killed. We could see that. But what statement do we issue? So bilaterally, we're good with Israel.
Correct. Yeah.
But now, within a multilateral station, like in the United Nations, then it becomes a challenge for us. And at that point, everyone is seeing Kenya's position, because actually at that time I was in France, and the ambassador or Palestine's ambassador to France was a good friend, because we were working collaboratively to promote African programs in UNESCO. And Kenya had that position, very high position, and people respected us. So I met him, we just hugged, and he shed his tears, and we just walked away. I mean, what could I say?
Yeah.
Our statement is out, his people are being killed. How it's like, he felt like we have betrayed them.
Correct.
But look at that again from another perspective. The Arab countries in Africa, there are many Arabic speaking countries. The North Africa, including Sudan. What do we ever do individually, diplomatically, to be able to have a diplomatic offensive to be able to correct that image?
Yes. I mean,
so these are some of the challenges, and people, and as I said earlier, the record of remembrance is about the bad things.
Yes.
So people will still remember and say, why is Kenya not caring about these things that we care about? So it is us to make the point, or to put our house in order.
Okay.
Victor, you see, just before, this is very important in terms of what we do in the bedroom, can be eavesdropped or can come out. So what we do locally, domestically, can actually have an effect internationally. So your statements as a leader may look casual and normal, but somebody picks them and says, those are your internal domestic politics. So really, leaders,
statement.
Yeah, like he was
that
saying,
it can. International politics
yes,
has a close relationship
with local
domestic politics.
Yes.
In fact, we derive our foreign policy from our national interests, which are local.
So, Prof, therefore, the kind of leaders you actually nominate and elect will show the face of the country. Yeah, and this is where Kenyans must be serious.
And actually, just agreeing with you further, I always keep telling people that actually, once you reach a particular leadership position, once you're minister, in fact, once you're president, everything you say is policy.
Yeah.
By the time you're minister, the statements you make, you cannot come and say, okay, fine, we shall do this or we shall support this, and then say, no, I was just speaking. That doesn't apply. In fact, we listen to the president to get policy directions. We don't go reading policy documents, because that is where we are saying, no, that is Kenya's intentions.
Yeah.
As far as we are concerned, that's Kenya's. You can say, yeah, that was not the official policy, the president was just speaking. Or there is nothing like that once you reach a particular caliber of leadership. Like now, you think any of us goes to read the US foreign policy or whatever it is. We just listen to what Trump has said. And as far as we're concerned, that is US official policy. And you see countries responding formally. To what US? To the US, based on what the president has said.
Yeah.
They're not waiting for documents to come from Washington, to say that, okay, fine, I mean, we'll have these tariffs.
Just for our viewers.
So I agree with you 100% that whatever we say, particularly whatever the Kenyan leadership says.
And whatever we do.
We cannot purport that those are just our local things.
So, Prof, when you see...
And it doesn't affect what's happening now.
So, Victor, when you see people arrested in a manner by hooded men and women locally, those are local politics. I mean, the way we arrest our people is our problem. It has an effect in how international community will see us, isn't it? Yeah, so when you are saying you are going to compete, they are seeing people who are hooded, and that's how, and yet Kenya has been a peaceful powerhouse destination.
True.
This is where people knew that if you want to go walk in the street, apart from small muggings from street children, or rather street, people, Kenya is safe.
Yeah.
Now you're making it look like if you go there and you're a foreigner and you have an issue with your home country, they can easily, abduct you and send you back home, which is not our Kenyan identity. And that's why we are saying We're actually rigged. When you look at the caliber of leaders and what they comment and how they advise the president, he was complaining about people in the foreign affairs, I mean, who is the diplomats and all that.
Yeah.
But I think we are rigged. The whole country, the leadership is trying to do things that are opposite of what Kenya is actually been known for.
Okay, all right. Daktari, how do we distinguish between two things, Raila Odinga and Kenya? Because Kenya was participating in that election, but Kenya produced a candidate.
Yes.
So how do we distinguish between the two?
Normally, is what is looked at is the qualification of any candidate that has been fronted, because he's the one carrying the flag. It's very important that what candidate have you fronted. But for the candidate to win, it's heads of state and governments who are going to vote. So they also look at the country. Who is the diplomats represent a country, don't represent a candidate. So we adopt the candidate with the good credentials, we package him, and we sell him to the rest of the member states of the AU. So it's important which candidate we have, but it's equally important what is the stature, what is the reputation of our country, what is acceptable among our peers. If they feel that the candidate has a problem, then that will affect us.
Okay.
Also, if the country they view the country as having wronged them or having not worked closely or cooperated on certain issues, then again it hurts the candidate. But let me say this, for us to win, we must do this right. We must do this right. One diplomat asked me, I called a diplomat on Friday, or yesterday, and the diplomat told me, Kenya is a big country. Why did you have to give us an 80-year-old man? Diplomat from an African country.
Yes.
Yeah, an African country. Then, you know, those are questions you don't have, but I'm looking for information as a political scientist. Yeah, as a political scientist, that Kenya is a well-educated, you are many educated people, and strong and younger.
Was it going to have any effect?
I
when
think,
we look at the age.
You see, age, that is an
Raila himself
yeah?
was going to have an effect.
Yes.
That's an executive position.
Exactly.
It's an executive position, but let us tell the truth.
And remember...
You have to sit and work.
And remember the two issues here. Number one, Raila, based on his position, which is not too bad. You know, he's been prime minister. He considers himself as a peer to the African presidents. That is one. So basically, he considers himself at the same level with them, and rightly so. He's been a prime minister.
Yes.
And basically, the position he occupies, and even the stature Raila occupies in the continent, is basically that of a president. Yeah. So there is that. And the second bit, remember, the African Union Commission is subservient to the African Union.
Yes.
So there are some of the bigger questions that you actually want to ask from a generic point of view. I run a company, and would I pick somebody more powerful than me to be my CEO, or my peer to be my CEO?
Prof, that is the question.
So we have a bit of that power dynamics, and then of course there's also the real practical issue that is being raised, not just by diplomats. This is an issue that's being raised by Kenyans. Yes, we can make all the noise and say, oh, you know, Raila is fit to actually run this, but even those of us who come from Raila's bedrock, we actually, there's now a common joke running. Of course, we know in Senate, for example, we talk about the youth leader, who's Raila's brother, who's 82 years old, and the reason why we say these people must be voted, on a light note, we say, you know, Odinga is a total orphan. He has no father, he has no mother, and his youth is young. So, you know, we need to do sympathy votes. But that's how ridiculous the thing has come. My point is, if African Union, and I'm throwing the question outside there, and even to the three of us here in the panel, if African Union was your private company that you own, would you actually appoint an 80-year-old CEO?
Okay.
To run it.
Wakili, would you answer that as you?
No, I think Raila Odinga is a Pan-Africanist, and he's known well. I think he was right candidate. That's the way I see it. The problem was that the whole political climate around him was rigged from the word go, because the reasons for taking him to the African Union are not acceptable to many Kenyans, and then the way we handled our local politics, and this is a warning. It should be a good warning to the leadership that the way you treat people, they will pay you back. At any time, they will pay you back. And the problem with our head of state, for example, when you go to speak to Yoweri Museveni, Yoweri Museveni is the 8-year-old we are talking about. You're not going there to try to influence him or tell him something. And there's a big problem in Kenya Kwanza, by the way, that the youthful leaders, the other day the president came to Kisii, and he was supposed to call the stalwarts, the veteran politicians, the elders, so to say, to State House. And who does he delegate to call them? It is Silvanus Osoro. And Silvanus Osoro is calling very old politicians who have succeeded in their careers, and he's telling them, the president is coming, please, we want you to come. And some of them, they spoke to us, we cannot speak the names, but they said, like, the young man is saying, we go. This is 8 in the morning, and he's telling me that in the night, the president will be at Kisii, State Lodge. So for me, the type of leadership coming from Kenya Kwanza is actually abrasive, is young, and the head of state has not surrounded himself with people who are both his peers and older to tell him that, Your Excellency, this one, let's go this way. He has people he tells. He speaks to. And this is, to me, the main problem to him, and it may affect the nation, and that is why most people oppose his policies. He himself as a person could be a cool guy. I mean, he would, we can agree with him, but he must change that type of leadership. And what Professor Bosira is saying, that who are you sending to foreign affairs? Who are you sending to represent you in
let's take a break.
Abidjan and all that?
Exactly. Let's take a break. And we come back. It's already 8 on the dot. Time flies so fast when you're having some good discussion. Oh, my goodness. We'll be right back.
It is the type of people...
I agree that. I agree. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us.
Greetings in the name of the Most High, Jah Rastafari. My good name is Marley Moses, the Positive Warrior, alongside...
Yes, sir, DJ D-Rage, the baddest. Each and every Wednesday from 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 TV.
Tunakuletea the biggest reggae party in 254 in a yard extra. Extra niceness of reggae music.
Extra dose of entertainment.
When the thing is nice, we
have to do it twice.
Got the fear of missing out? Want to keep up with all the latest entertainment news and latest celebrity gossip? From the latest rumors to popping events to the newest fashion trends, here is where you get all the tea or juice when it comes to entertainment, and you get it served on time. All that and so much more on Grapevine every single Monday from 10 p.m. and a rerun every Tuesday from 2 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1. Remember, if you did not see it on Grapevine, then it most probably never happened.
No fancy meals anymore? When our son is not at home?
I don't mean to bother you. I have something to ask you.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did you know my home address?
If she doesn't retake or do the makeup exam, she might not be able to graduate. I'm so anxious and I don't know what to do, and I suddenly thought of you.
Students are all wasting their time.
They're young. Young people's time is for wasting. Challenge the limit.
Oh, okay, all right. No, continue. Well, welcome back. Having the last stretch of this discussion, we are supposed to be out in the next few. But before we do that, let me be very fair and take you through the front page of local dailies here. On the front page of the Standard, Ruto's blunders. That was on the front page of the Standard newspaper. Ruto's blunders. It says that President William Ruto's diplomatic missteps on regional conflicts and global alliances may have cost Raila Odinga the AU chairmanship. Analysts cite that his stance on the DRC crisis, Israel-Gaza war, and failure to mobilize key African blocs as key setbacks. Yeah. Finally, Raila conceded defeat, vowing to continue serving Africa in other capacities. Gentlemen, this is exactly what we've just talked about in the last 1 hour.
That is true.
It says that, again, still on the front page, how scrapping of medical cover hurt students, CEO reveal sure of ailing economy and all that. Here, gentlemen, the Baringo senator passed on yesterday in the morning. That is William Cheptumo. Passed on, and we definitely send our condolences.
Condolences.
Exactly. All right. On the front page of the Star newspaper, very quickly, how the dead are providing a livelihood for Kenyans. That's on the front page of the Standard or the Star newspaper. How the dead are providing a livelihood for Kenyans. That is, I think, is the business of
coffins.
Yeah. You can take it. Rough road for Ruto after Raila's defeat in AUC chairperson polls. Wakili, you talked about it, and I said probably we went through Mwakenya, and now it's on the Star. You read through the mind of the editors. You'll tell us who gave you the Mwakenya. And finally, big test for Ruto Raila handshake, quote unquote. Big test for Ruto Raila handshake. Loss paves way for Odinga's grand return to the helm of ODM party. Remember, the chairman is right now is Professor Nyang'nyongo, who is holding that mantle. You know,
it's already gone.
What do you mean it's already gone?
The owner has come back.
The owner is here.
The owner is back.
Okay, so let me circle back with you, Prof. When you look at the whole of this scenario, so now, basically whatever we're discussing here is on the front page of the local dailies.
Correct.
But when you look at the way this election was handled, do you think Kenya gave the best of its behavior as a nation?
Yeah, well, I think we'll go back. We'll still just go back to what we're discussing, because how is this election won? This is a campaign that is done with presidents. That's number one. And as Dr. was highlighting here, you know, a lot of decisions made by presidents are typically made. The presidents, in many instances, don't attend in person. Those things are made by foreign affairs ministers. And that's a place where you want a lot of stability. What I was saying was that our diplomats, the ones who are putting there, the Singways, the PS, and so on, are they the sort of people who can actually pick their phone and call any president, and the president will respond? Or, you know, set up a meeting with the president and they would respond. Number two, do they have enough respect of their peers, you know, ministers for foreign affairs, again, where, you know, they can get honest opinion in terms of what's happening within these particular blocks. And and so on, where you can call a minister for South Africa and ask them, but what is SADC thinking?
Yeah.
You know, you can call the minister for Morocco and so on. So this brings me to the point that we need to actually have depth.
Okay.
Those things are not built overnight. That's the point we're saying. You need to have seasoned diplomats whom you allow to build real serious personal capital that they use for the country. In this particular situation where you actually have a bunch of newbies that are just excited with positions all over the world with no technical abilities in the areas that they actually work on, whether it's peace and security, as has been highlighted here, whether it is international global politics and so on. I think this is one area where Kenya is suffering. This whole idea that whoever is going to win the election in 2027 will replace all the diplomats and then collect people from their villages, including petrol attendants, to be in charge of very sensitive stations around the world.
Okay.
We need, honestly, as a country moving forward, we need to seriously think about the people themselves that we put in these key diplomatic positions. It is not just rewarding villagers. This is about our sovereignty. This is about the sort of positioning that we take in the global stage. It is how actually people end up viewing us from outside there. As it were, even our foreign affairs minister, as far as I'm concerned, is a zero diplomat. Musalia Mudavadi is not a diplomat at all. Yes, he's a seasoned politician, that is true, but he is not a diplomat at all. You know, we don't have people at that level that you can say, no, this guy will actually hack this thing for us, because he's been inside there, he's chaired meetings for presidents, you know, he's networked with foreign affairs ministers globally. He understands all these other issues. Currently, when I look at that particular place, I see desertification of talent. While we are in a country with a lot of people who are competent and who can do this
when you
very
look
well.
at that, I mean, we'll open another set of discussion. I know where you're headed. But there's a question I would love to ask the two of you gentlemen. Coming to you, do you think this should be a law that should be changed that probably allows for a rotation of this position? Dr. you'll also help me in this. If at all something should be done in the AUC role. But as you also come in...
They've already done it. It's regional. It rotates.
It rotates. That comes automatically, that once it's from here, then it goes to this block.
There is.
Yes.
I
that
think
is why Raila was able to contest.
That is why the candidates are in Eastern African region.
This what we lost actually for a position that has been reserved for us as Eastern African countries.
But the problem is internally we did not do proper consultations and agree to front one
East African region fronted just one candidate. The candidate was going to win.
So, but Victor, I think we should not kill competition where peers have to fight for a particular position. But it is true that it's a consensus that if the Southern Africa bloc wants to field a candidate, the SADC and all, will support him. Correct. If the East African region wants to get a candidate, and this was our time, by all means, as I told you, Raila Odinga, the stature and everything. The problem, I think we are discussing Middle East and North Africa and the US. Let's come back home. The problem is us. And that's why I like the question you asked, and let Professor have the last word. But for now, I want to say this. If we, every other election cycle, think that it is our time to eat, and we take our cronies to State House and the Parliament and the judiciary during our time, then we are not going to have a country in the end, because every other 5 years, we have to come in and then I have to reward my friends, my relatives, and then irrespective of the impact on the economy. Then this is what the problem is. You had Uhuru Kenyatta, Mwai Kibaki, even Raila Odinga himself, and they said that unless we look at the problems of the country in the true character of what they are, then we are missing the point. So when you win elections, and then you bring people around you who, in all honesty, and there is no demeaning such people, but they don't get it. They don't know how to treat people. They don't know how to read policy. They don't know what to do with policy, by the way. They just don't know. So you are a person in foreign affairs, and something has happened, and you cannot even consult your colleagues who are next to you and say, what did we say about this issue? Then you come out, yani in Swahili unaropokwa. It's like there's something burning you. You just want to occupy the space by talking. This is the major problem. Number two, national resources are not meant for your relatives and friends. National resources are meant to develop the country.
Okay.
Then you get your salary and maybe some tender you do, then that is what is your money. But you can see how even people are behaving in the counties. Everybody is looking for a relative to pay this and then keep it back. I mean, Tito case is an example now.
Right.
So this is the problem with our country. Otherwise, we have enough resources. We have a lot of human capital. It's just that this human capital is not properly being utilized.
Okay.
You say that there's a, I didn't know there's a petrol attendant in.
No. There were when there was vetting, one who said he had his experience was managing a petrol station. I mean, yes. And the parliament, for good reasons, dropped him.
That is an experience.
Yes. In Goma,
actually, that is true.
in the consulate, Kenya's as Consul General.
Let's come back home, gentlemen. Let's come back home. So, still on the front page of the Daily Nation, you all see this. Big test for Ruto Raila handshake. So, Dr. You said that the owner of the party is back.
You know, you saw how he handed over.
Now let's come back home.
He didn't hand over a baton, but he handed over something else.
On an interim basis.
Looked like a piece of paper. It was not a really rungu that took over. And definitely it's going to be like Nyong'o would hand over and say, Baba, you're back. Have your tools.
So this was a very good plan.
I wish if everyone was convinced, especially that he was going to win. Why didn't they fully hand over to have a chairman fully in charge? Of course, you don't want to take anything for granted. He is coming back, but I cannot really imagine what role he's going to play. But you know, Raila is one of the politicians who moves around and tricks things around and things work for him. So we expect him to come back, as he has been welcomed back, and take his position. Whether people are watching, I think they should be watching to see whether he's going to play government or he's going to play opposition. Now that Raila himself, Azimio, is majority according to the court. According to Wetangula, they are not. But is it the rule of man or the rule of law? So if that stands, then Raila is going to take a position very strong because the court has strengthened his position. But besides that, there is the issue you raised that Wakili responded to. And he says it's good to compete, but at what cost? Our people are suffering. Dude, Amina Mohammed was about $4 million was spent. This one, the rumor was, or whatever it was like 10 billion Kenya shillings. That's not little money. That opulence we can't afford.
Correct.
Diplomacy, you can spend zero. In fact, let me say this, when we are having elections in UNESCO, in November 2023, I didn't spend a single cent from government. But we won all our candidatures. Do we have to spend huge sums of money in order to make a point? In fact, again, we didn't make a point, a positive point.
Exactly.
It's like our reputation is on the line.
Correct.
So we can do better using diplomacy. That's the role of diplomats. And collect information, know that we're going to win or we're not going to win. Or we have to mend fences where we have problems.
Correct.
Like now, the DRC issue. One of the presidents, I don't want to mention because it might be construed as problematic, actually read a riot act to another president in SADC. And we were quiet. And that sent out really a strong message that is like, you guys don't want us. They even threatened, this president threatened that they can take the war to South Africa.
Okay.
Our position also on inviolability of our borders. When a country supports insurgents, M23, some countries are supporting. And we say, as Kenya, we take a position that we cannot use force. What else can you use?
What else can you use? Diplomacy.
What else can you use? So people are saying, reading into this, Kenya, yes, we are saying we can use diplomacy here, but then stop the war. Can you have a ceasefire before we talk? But the war is continuing.
Okay.
South African soldiers had been killed who were peacekeepers in DRC, in Goma. Pictures came, in fact, picture came out, mothers killed and children are still alive on their backs. You couldn't believe.
Yeah.
Victor.
Yeah.
Those things really go into people's psyche, and people will say, no. We need someone else because to sort out these issues.
Prof, leadership does not depend on PhD. Tremendous respect, don't kill me here.
No, PhD matters.
I love, I'm actually looking forward to myself to that.
I hope you're not addressing Professor.
No, but you see, I mean,
He's
this is
addressing us.
We
are taking it on behalf of the team. Those who are outside.
We have to be honest that leadership does not depend on it. It's a very important factor, but it does not depend on it. And therefore, when our president is the CEO, the chief, who is supposed to take care of what is happening in the DRC and these other countries, and he is trying to call them to order and into a meeting, and they do not reciprocate or respond to him and agree to put down the tools and discuss. That tells you PhD is not at play. So what then is at play? No, gentlemen, you understand me. What then is at play? It is who you are. By the way you are as a person can play a lot in leadership. The way you are, just the way you are. Who are you? Are you high-tempered, quick-tempered, slow? Are you cool? Are you quarrelsome? Are you, listener? All these things. So they count a lot, and that's why we are saying a person of the stature of Raila Odinga. Look at Uhuru Kenyatta. Yes, we complained he did this mess, that mess in the country, but he has been given a task that is faithfully doing to date in Africa, isn't it? And people listen to him. To some extent, leaders listen to him. He sits down, they debate a point, they agree or disagree, but it's never acrimonious. So our president, depending on who he is, Kagame will listen. Depending on who he is, Tshisekedi will listen. Depending on who he is, so-and-so might not listen to him. And so that's why even this campaign for Raila, we saw that it was going to be successful, but then all of a sudden, things turn out that, no, we will not take Raila. And then they start, tagging us into, oh, you are playing your local politics. And now Raila Odinga coming back to the country. In politics, by the way, which is totally different from like church leadership or others, when you have power, you seize it. There is no other way. Raila is coming back. Raila will not play a second fiddle when the court has told him you are the majority. Raila is now supposed to be teaming up with regional leaders, like-minded people, and ensure that we remove the country from this image that is likely to look worse in terms of how do we treat people, these projects, public funds, how are they managed? When you give a promise that there will be a road from here, there, is it true? These things have been left to the likes of Murang'a, Kebaso. and this is Raila's domain. It is his forte. So it is high time Raila comes here, and I said in my handle the other day that it is high time when the Gen Z talk about, for example, Fred Matiang'i. That is not a person who will be a leader just like that. It cannot be. It will depend on people like Raila Odinga. And therefore, Raila cannot come and hide himself behind a post or behind the head of state and say, now I am playing my game from here. That is a person who must be ahead of everybody, and he must lead the opposition correctly. He must take his position in ODM, and he must mobilize all these leaders. Kalonzo Musyoka, I mean, we are talking about Gachagua himself, Eugene Wamalwa, Natembeya, Fred Matiang'i. All these people should by now actually be talking behind Raila Odinga.
Martin is saying that Wakili, remember there is a broad-based government, so you must tread carefully as well.
I think just to add there, I think part of the challenge that we're seeing here, and that two are intertwined, is that we have, if you look at leadership generally in Kenya, I think we had Moi, and then we had Kibaki, then we had Uhuru, now we have Ruto, and then we can throw in Raila there. If you look at most of these people, apart from Kibaki, the issue was sort of a personality cult. These are people who led as individuals, literally. You know, downplaying the role of institutions. In fact, thinking that they're actually above those institutions. We see Ruto trying to do that, saying, look, there's parliament, there's what, but then there's Ruto the president. And whatever the president does, you know, it is just the role of the institutions to process them. It is not like you are heading these institutions and you want them to be very effective. Okay. Raila is the same. Personality cult. In fact, we call him the enigma. He's almost like a leader of a religious cult. No, exactly. Not somebody who is in charge of systems and so on. And that's why the entire groupings, including even ODM, they're not saying, what does the law say? what is he empowered to do? Baba will give us direction. So I think that's one of the problems that we have.
What are we looking at? Once he's back
we need
from Addis
both.
Ababa.
You see, the thing is, you need strong leaders who can direct. But in fact, my only prayer is that eventually we can get strong leaders who can lead through institutions and who can build institutions. And we have a situation here where we've got strong leaders who are pooping on institutions rather than building them. So they're not building strong political parties. They're not building strong grouping in parliament. They're not. It is themselves who are strong. And they look at some of these other systems.
What do you want Raila Odinga to do once he's back in the country?
Mobilize, yes.
In fact, by the way, I'm trying to help Raila sort out his problems. I know I'm not qualified to do this, but you see the issues, for example, like what wannabe Dr. Nyaribo was highlighting there. You see, the courts, for example, have made a ruling that Azimio is a majority party. That is the current position as it stands. We don't want a situation where people are still coming in to say, oh, we'll discuss with the president. What are you discussing with the president? The current position is that Azimio is the majority, and we expect Raila to come in and say, unfortunately we won't do that, but we'll come in and say, look here, being a respecter of institutions, systems, and rule of law, who am I, Raila Odinga, to oppose decisions that have been made by the courts. So we are going to implement this immediately.
You're overthinking. You are overthinking.
But we won't do that.
You are overthinking.
Not necessarily overthinking. This is the issue. In fact, this is the core of what we're discussing here today. That we do have two very strong leaders who are leading as individuals and through personality cult. And that's one of the reasons why we've lost in Addis. Rather than leading through institutions and strengthening them. Right. That's a bigger point I'm trying to make. Institutions like East African Community, like IGAD, like SADC, and so on and so
What do you think Raila Odinga should do once he's back in the country, as we wind up?
Perhaps his first priority should be to seize the leadership of, get back the leadership of ODM, and march into taking his position as together as a coalition. In fact, they should now, it is an opportunity for him to come together as Azimio. Yes. Bring back Azimio, because Azimio, broad-based, really scattered them, and now bring them together and say, oh, you guys, we're a majority. And as majority,
we have a responsibility. Exactly.
Majority should provide a direction in Kenya's leadership in the House.
Correct.
Because, I mean, we have had a parliament, and I will say that without a fear of contradiction, we have had a parliament which does not appear to have any priorities.
Correct.
And the priority perhaps they have is about themselves. They don't have priority on Kenyan suffering. So, no, people are sleeping hungry. Children are not going to school. University funding, students are not coming. Over 80,000 last students who graduated in 2023 never went to university. These are issues of concern.
Look at the finance bill that caused us all this problem.
The finance bill that caused us all this problem.
It was purportedly developed by Parliament.
And they said it's okay, it's okay.
And you think Raila is the cure to all this?
He has a role to play, because now he's the leader. He's one of the leaders of majority.
He's a majority.
Too much work for one person.
Not one person. Again, let me say this.
He got the job, he can't say it's too much work.
Let me say this.
He's the ODM leader. Unless he's,
let me finish by saying,
down as ODM leader.
Let me finish by saying,
these professors
I respect the idea, this idea that in institutions. Exactly. We have to strengthen our institutions.
And what institutions?
Whether we are talking about parliament,
Correct.
whether we are talking about the courts, whether we are talking about... Then there is not one person.
Wakili is busting here.
Victor, yes. The country is headed this direction, and many people feel that despite the promises, this direction is not good because, like he said, people are not eating. Whatever is not functioning.
Secondary school, nothing.
And you know, funds are not being remitted to educational institutions.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, and then the way they are playing politics is as if it's child play. They're not raising our country to the stature where it is, or better. And then they keep saying economy is growing. Of course, the statistics from Treasury and World Bank and Central Bank will show that there is a 1 or 1.3% growth. But then, what is GDP and growth? It is not the price, it is the value. Exactly. How do you feel your country is helping you? That is what is important. It's not that the bread has gone back to 30 bob. No. What is the quality of the bread you are eating? That's how we can conclude that, that's how we can conclude that economy has grown. Yeah. So to help the country from this, Raila Odinga has the honors and the duty. Correct. In fact, it's not his choice so much like it is his duty to come together and mobilize these regional leaders. Exactly. Now we see in Western there are emerging leaders who are coming, apart from Mudavadi, and we can see, you know, in the coast. You know, there are people who have been hungry for long, and the Azimio did not send people to the broad-based government. Individual persons who went, and this has been clarified by everybody, including Anyang' Nyong'o, Sifuna, Raila himself. This was individuals who went to help. So let me finish, please. Let Raila Odinga come, pick leadership from Northeastern. I mean, you assume that the Northeastern is supporting Ruto, but you could see they're telling him outrightly that you're new Wongo.
You are saying that he should come back and take
let him go.
But on AU, you say that he's old.
Let him, no, this is not AU. This is our local politics. Let him come to the Kisii region. Let him discuss with Fred. Let him go to Coast. Let him go to Masaini. I mean, these are all his friends, by the way.
So you missed him. So you missed him around.
No, he should come and take his right position and then challenge the president. If he does not come and do that, we are leaving the country to go this direction, which actually everybody is complaining about. And that's my concern.
Wakili, just help us here. That declaration by the courts and the version that the speaker had.
By the Wetangula, yes.
What takes precedence?
Wetangula, of course, court decisions take precedent. Correct. Yeah. But Wetangula, he comes, you know, it's too casual. It's like a kangaroo, you know, gathering. He comes to the parliament and then he says, let me see how many are in the majority. 1, 2, 3, 165. Let me see in the 154. Then he says, the majority have it. That is not how. What went to court was, after elections in 2022, we had several parties within Kenya Kwanza and several parties within Azimio who garnered the majority. That time it was clear.
At the election.
Yes. And immediately after that, several people decamped.
Yes.
Of course, they were requested or bought, whatever. Then they came to, they stood with Kenya Kwanza.
Yes, true.
Was it procedural? No, that is what went to court.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was not procedural per the Political Parties Act, per the Constitution. It was not. And then the court said, because the court cannot rush to December 2024, it has to go to when the matter was brought to court. So Azimio had the majority. It would be foolish, let me use that word. Let me use that word very carefully. It would be foolish for Azimio and our veteran politician like Raila Odinga to ignore a gift he has been given to lead and start supporting the other side.
Wakili Amos Nyaribo is an advocate of the High Court.
Ishmael Nyaribo. Amos is my governor.
Advocate of the High Court, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Daktari, who is honored ambassador, lecturer, University of Nairobi, political science. Thank you so much, Daktari, for always coming to the show. And Professor,
thank you.
Alfredo Menya, asante sana. He's also principal researcher and a consultant.
And I'm coming to PhD, so don't mind if I said.
Oh, we shall use it against you.
I see that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Victor Lowe. Goodbye for now. Bye-bye.
Technology has become a crucial part of our society. Without technological advancements, so much of our everyday lives would be drastically different. As technology develops, it strives to fulfill the changing needs of society. This means that technology exists to help us achieve the things that we wouldn't be able to achieve without it. Take on Tech looks at the advantages and downside of technological innovation in a world that is becoming increasingly dependent on new digital technologies. Every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
Pindi tunapowasha vifaa vyetu, tunapata fursa ya kutangamana na wasikilizaji wetu.
Karibu sana thĩinĩ wa tabarĩra ya Rwiga.
Tunapeperusha utangazaji uliobobea katika habari,
nĩ ũndũ wa macio na mangĩ maingĩ,
burudani,
nĩ harĩa tũkoragwo tũkĩigua nyĩmbo mwaki nyĩmbo hoda
na hamasisho la kiroho. Usiachwe nyuma. Jiunge nasi kwa safari ya kufana katika 99.5 FM. Soro FM.
Mambo gani haya? Mambo kama mtu mfupi kama kitunguu. Unaona round mwangalie.
Sasa huyu amenitoa kwa samba kuja kunitreat na ananiweka alafu kuna watu. Umakasirika?
No, stakabadhi ya kupita kwa airport kama una travel.
Sema turubena nyakiraju.
Luvena
Nyakiraju.
Nyakilalo.
Kabisa sasa mimi nataka ile nguo. Ukishaivaa, nataka na kurekodi kwa video napiga Vivian, so that the concern. Wajui eh?
Sorry gani wewe na nyatia anatoka kama na nyemelea.
Nene.
Sound check. Indeed, you're watching Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Megwe. Thank you for staying with us. Now from politics, we shift gears and talk about matters water regulatory reforms. And in studio, I'm joined by CEO Richard Cheruyot, who is the CEO of Water Services Regulatory Board, that is WASREB. Welcome to the program.
Asante.
Thank you for making time. Let's get directly into it. For a person who is hearing about WASREB for the first time, what is it and what's its mandate?
Thank you very much, Mike, for this, and thank you for having us in studio this morning. Just to speak about issues of regulation, and just to also talk about our journey that has been there for the last 20 years. When you talk about the Water Services Regulatory Board, we're talking of that institution that is in charge of regulation of water services. And for us, water services is water and sanitation services. We are creation of the reforms, and like I said, we've been in existence for the last 20 years. Our mandate is basically to regulate water and sanitation services. We actually say we are the custodian of the right to water on behalf of the Kenyan citizens. You're aware that the Constitution under the Bill of Rights does guarantee the right to water and sanitation services, and we are that institution that basically ensures that that right is seen to be given, or is seen, or the actors that are there basically demonstrate that there's action towards realization of that right. So WASREB basically exists to ensure that that right is delivered and that right is safeguarded.
All right. How do you ensure that there is access to safe and safe water services, safe water and reliable water services to the people?
Like I said, when you look at the issue of regulation, you're basically saying you want to ensure that people have that right and have that right in the standards that have been prescribed in the Of course, when you talk about ensuring, then you start from where are we currently. So for us, the first thing that we look at is really ensuring that we have data in terms of where are we starting from and where do we want to go. So we have indication of where access is currently as we speak. But then the government has plans to ensure that, we have a national vision. And to support that vision, we have developed a national water and sanitation plan. That plan basically is the blueprint to taking us to where we want to go in terms of access. But then that plan alone, without really clear deliverables, cannot take us to where we want to go. So we have actors who are responsible for this. Of course, the way the Constitution is structured is that water and sanitation services is a shared function between the national government and the county governments. The national government basically being responsible for policy, regulation, both for water services and water resources, but then the county is being responsible for water services delivery. And I think increasingly as we talk about water services delivery, we're basically talking about water and sanitation services. So we have, you have the national standards, you have the plan, and that plan, by the way, the development of that plan was actually from what the counties felt were the things that needed to be done to be able to get us to the national vision. So it was actually developed from the bottom and upwards, and we have a national plan that now says if we implement this plan, then we will be able to get to our national targets in matters of water and sanitation services. But then the actors really, the duty bearers in terms of water and sanitation service provision are the county governments. The county governments are required by law to put in place vehicles that deliver these services on their behalf. And these vehicles are called the water service providers. So we have the water service providers whose mandate now on behalf of the county governments is to deliver this service. And in that mandate of the water service providers, the license that they have been issued with has clear targets to now ensure that for the areas that have been given, they demonstrate or they are progressively improving on access. And when you issue a license to a water service provider, that license has clear targets annually for the period of the license for them to deliver in terms of access levels.
So that touches on the issues of enforcing compliance, especially for water service providers.
Yeah. Actually, Mike, when we talk about licensing, then you're basically saying, it has obligations, but again, it has, you have the obligations to deliver as a water service provider. So we agree that these are the targets that you have to deliver as a water service provider. In the event that you don't deliver on those targets, what are then the sanctions that come in? But the way we approach this is really, we have agreed, we discuss and agree on these targets with the water service providers, and they, they commit to targets that actually are reasonable, and they are quite sure that with the resources that they have, then they can be able to deliver on those targets. But again, the national government has a role to play in terms of improving access. So we have, in terms of the institutional framework that we have entities that we call waterworks development agencies, whose role is really basically to develop assets and hand over those assets, if they are within the specific counties, to the water service providers for operations. But the law has now been amended to say that if those counties are cutting across more than one county, then the waterworks development agency basically then operate those waterworks and deliver those and sell this water in bulk to the respective water service providers in the different counties. So in that architecture, then you're basically saying you collaborate both as a national government and the county government to be able to deliver on access to water services.
Yes. Speaking of access to safe and affordable water services, what is the status of water supply in the country, and are there ongoing efforts to improve it?
If we talk about the status of water services in the country, I think as part of the mandate that we have is to report annually to the public in terms of water and sanitation services. And we have done this. I said the journey for WASRA began in the last 20 years. Annually, we produce a report that looks at what is, really the level of access nationally, The last report we did was for 2023-2024. And that looked at, what are the levels of access. We currently have, water service providers that cover about 55% of the national population. And access in the areas of this, what we would actually call regulated water service providers, is about 65%. We are in the process, if you look at the plan that we have as WASREB, we're in the process of now looking at the other 45% of the population. How does it look like? These are places where, you have rural systems, you have what we would actually be calling small-scale service providers. So what we're looking at currently is now to map out all these systems, which we have really done, and trying to look at what is their contribution to the national access. So we have nationally access of levels of 65%. If you look back, the national targets as of 2015 was supposed to be at 80% in the urban areas. And since most of these water service providers are in the urban areas, then you're basically saying we are falling short by about 15 percentage points if you look at the targets that we had. But the plan that I referred to, because then you asked me about where do we stand and what are the plans. When we developed the National Water and Sanitation Plan, it was basically to look at where are we currently and where can we get in the next 5 years for now, because the National Water and Sanitation Plan is taking us to 2030, which nationally and globally we're supposed to have universal access to water services. So this is the plan, and this is where we are in terms of access, and the plan is to drive us to get to this. The critical point as we look at this is really to ensure that we adhere to the plan and put resources to be able to drive us to the commitments that we have in the plan. Yes.
As the CEO of this body, what can you say has been the biggest challenge in ensuring that there is universal access to clean water?
I think one is we need, like if you look at the amount of resources that we require. When we did that plan, when the national government did the plan, we're talking of about 995 billion Kenya shillings for the next 5 years. Of course, the plan was done in 2023, so that was supposed to be in the next 7 years. That is quite a huge amount of resources that is required. The way, Mike, we financed water services in this country for the last 20 years, and that was the whole essence of the reform process, was actually through what we call actually 3 T's. Although now people talk about the 4th one, but the 3 T's are basically from taxes, from transfers, from the tariff, and then increasingly now towards trade. Appreciating that as a country we're moving from a low income to a low medium income country. So we're moving to the 4th T. The whole essence of the reform process was really incrementally focused on the T, that is the tariff. Because if you look at government financing this, that is quite huge. It's about 1 trillion shillings. The current budget that we had is that we have currently is about 4 trillion. So basically set aside 25% of the national budget towards water services. It may be too ambitious. So I think what we need to do is really look at these other 3 T's. We have made quite some good strides looking at the tariff in terms of the contribution of the tariff to financing water services. I think what we are seeing, there's been a bit of a challenge in the last few months where we've seen a bit of resistance to the tariff, which for me doesn't augur well for the sector because it has the potential to really glow back on the gains that we have realized. It's not to say that the tariff is not affordable, but I think it's generally just about resistance and attributed also to the high cost of living that we are seeing. We need to focus on financing through revenues that the water service providers generate. Then, of course, government can complement through taxes, and in the plan, in the National Water and Sanitation Plan, which we actually call NAWASIP, that contribution from each of the actors has actually been mapped out. In fact, we are moving now to looking at contribution of the private sector, and that's why when you talk about the amendments that were done in the Water Act recently, the focus was really to look at what is the place of public-private partnerships in financing of water and sanitation services. So I think it's clear, the plan is clear, it's for all the actors in this space to be able to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
And also, do these tariffs, speaking of tariffs, do they vary across different places or different counties?
Before the reforms, that was like 20 years ago, which is the journey that I was telling you. We used to have uniform tariffs across the country. Those uniform tariffs never used to have regard for the cost of service. You appreciate, of course, that we are not paying for the commodity that is water, but we are paying for the cost of providing that water from wherever it's gotten from to your doorstep. That cost of service varies from one place to the other. If you talk about the different countries, the different places in this country. If you talk of Nairobi, for example, and luckily, by the way, in most of the cities, now we have 5 cities. All these 5 cities, their water supplies come from outside those counties. So the way we've structured the tariffs and the whole essence of the reform process was to really say, can we have differentiated tariffs so that then the tariffs address the cost of being able to provide that service. So we have differentiated tariffs that looks at the cost of providing that service in the different places. So they vary from one place to the other, depending on what is the cost of providing that service. But again, speaking of the issue of, we've said this is a right.
Yes.
Yeah, and that right must be seen to be enjoyed, But then it must also be seen that there must be equity in service provision. So what happens is that nationally, we're saying you shouldn't spend more than 5% of your income on water and sanitation services. If that standard is surpassed, then what happens is that you call in for subsidies. Then you're saying, if we assess and say that the cost of water and sanitation services in a given place is more than 5% of a household income, and it's the average household income in a given place, then you would actually be saying the county government would come in to subsidize. So that then that water service becomes affordable. So indeed, you're right. The tariffs in different places are different because the cost of service in the different places is different.
And what are the steps of now ensuring that clean water remains affordable, especially to vulnerable groups?
So like I've said, one of course is by clearly defining those national standards. We're saying you shouldn't spend. So we have an indication of what is the average household income. And that average household income should then be linked to how much a household should spend in water services. But again, one of the critical principles, Mike, in setting tariffs is that, there should be fairness. And the way fairness is built in the tariff is that normally, what we would actually, the way we look at structuring of the tariff is that we've adopted an approach that says you pay more if you consume more. It's called an increasing block tariff. And that increasing block tariff has considered what you would actually call a lifeline tariff. A lifeline tariff is saying if on average, based on an average household, for example, of 5 people, each using about 50 liters of water per day, then you'd actually be saying you're using about 250 liters of water per day. So that's like quarter of a cubic meter. If you multiply that by about 30 days, it basically gives you about 6 cubic meters. So what happens is that that first 6 cubic meters is actually normally provided at lower than the average cost to ensure that it becomes affordable. If you're consuming more than the lifeline, if you're consuming, for example, as a person, more than 50 liters per person, 50 liters, then you pay more. So inbuilt within the tariff is what we actually call cross-subsidization. So the higher consumers actually pay higher than what you would actually say is the average cost. But again, the other consumers that are non-domestic would actually also be subsidizing the other domestic ones. You talk about if people using water for different purposes, that is not for domestic. If I'm using water for commercial purposes. If I'm using water for industrial purposes, then that person should actually subsidize that person who uses water for domestic purposes. Yeah, but so it ensures in that way, it ensures that then the water becomes affordable. But again, you appreciate that in very, in vulnerable places, the water may not be piped to your house. So you don't have the latitude of, saying you use 6 cubic meters. You fetch water from a domestic, from a communal water point. So if you're fetching water from a communal water point, what happens is that that rate has actually been almost subsidized, unless it's not possible to cross-subsidize from the other consumer categories. So what happens is that we've actually tried to standardize that. You look at a rate of about 2 shillings, 2 to 5 shillings for 20 liters. Yeah, it's still higher than what you would actually be paying if you're paying if you have supply access to the household, but then it is really to cushion again the vulnerable groups. And to ensure that that water becomes affordable, and we ensure that utilities, the water service providers, subsidize that cost, and to ensure that these vulnerable groups also have access. But moving away from a pricing approach, we've again push utilities to ensure that they provide access to these areas. Yeah. Because like I'm telling you, if you have access to the household, it's very likely to be cheaper than when you're getting it from a communal water point, leave alone the issue of convenience. Yeah. So what we're doing is in that assessment that we have for utilities, we have an indicator that we call PROPOA assessment. The PROPOA assessment looks at, what are the affirmative actions that water service providers are taking to ensure that these vulnerable groups have access to water services. And we've built in a number of, aspects, including even the way the institution is governed. You see, if from our assessment, if more than 30% of your consumers are from what you'd actually be calling low-income areas, then even in the board of the water company, there should be somebody sitting there to basically ensure that these interests of this group are safeguarded, and we assess that. So those are some of the interventions we are putting in place, just to ensure that for these vulnerable communities, water becomes is affordable.
Are there collaborations with stakeholders to ensure that or to improve equitable access to water and sanitation?
Yes. Just like in the whole governance framework, the way we have built in the issue of public participation, every decision, be it by the water service providers, be it by WASREB, has to be supported by a very elaborate public consultation process. So that ensures that in the decision-making process of the water service providers, even for us as WASREB, that this input of the people we are serving is actually captured. But again, we push, or we have put in the requirements for the water service providers that in certain given time intervals, they actually undertake stakeholder engagements. That stakeholder engagement is actually supposed to capture what the stakeholder needs are, and be able to then build in the plans that these utilities have, to ensure that you're speaking to the issues that these guys are asking for, and addressing the challenges that they are facing. So indeed, the whole issue of stakeholder engagement is very critical in all the decisions that we make in the whole value chain.
Are there technological innovations that you're using in water regulation?
Yes, both from a regulator perspective, but also from a service provision perspective. Let me start from water services provision. One of the biggest challenges that we face as a country is really the level of water losses. And that water loss is really because of, the kind of maybe meters we're using, the kind of maybe pipes we're using. And what we have done is really, work with the water service providers to improve on the efficiency of the kind of metering devices that we're using. We have cases where water service providers have actually been able to install smart meters. And smart meters are basically to assist them be able to, almost on a real-time basis, see how the water flow is. So if you have a whole area of a water service provider, you then demarcate that area into manageable units, where you're able to see how much water you're pushing in and how much of that water is actually read by these other meters. It almost gives you a real-time assessment of how water is being managed. So that addresses the issue of water losses. Because as we speak about improving access, one of the biggest challenges we are facing is that we're losing almost 50% of even what we produce. It's almost stuck at the last report that we did was 43%. The year before it was 45. So the improvement over time has actually been very marginal. We need to have very deliberate actions to actually ensure that we deal with water losses. But again, at the national level, we are having, adopting technology in different aspects. We want to, under our mandate of having a national database on water services. We have recently launched a system that we call Magic Data, and you can almost be able to see, nationally what are the access levels, what are the level of water losses in the different places. And that even is updated on an almost real-time basis, depending on what comes up from the ground. So these are some of the things that we are putting in place to ensure that we improve efficiency of water services. I think I needed to mention that one of the things why, for example, pricing is why in certain cases the price of water is high is also because of the level of water losses. If you're losing 50% of what you produce, that means I have to recover the cost from 50% of what I sell. That makes it high. Compare that with when you're losing 25%. It has a very direct implication on pricing. So it's critical that utilities adopt technology, or the sector adopts technology to make the water affordable, but again to ensure that being a water scarce country, then we're even able to safeguard what we are getting and manage it properly.
All right.
Yeah.
That was our time.
Okay.
And thank you for making time to come on Good Morning Kenya and talk about these regulation reforms. That is CEO Richard Cheruiyot, who is the head of Water Services Regulatory Board, that is WASREB, joining us here on Good Morning Kenya. We end this conversation here, but don't go too far. Good Morning Kenya continues shortly, and the question up next is, do women forgive and forget? Do women forgive and forget? Join Vivian Degwa up next with the next segment on Family Check. My name is Mike Megwe. Good morning.
Wellness is important in our daily lives, so that instead of just surviving, we should be thriving.
Ways to prevent a stroke or heart attack is for you to know what conditions you have by regular checkup. People don't know they have hypertension. They don't know they have diabetes.
I was pre-diabetic. I was afraid of getting lifestyle diseases because I come from a family that has lifestyle diseases.
How do you know if your cough is due to a serious condition? We'll have some answers. Stay well
and strive to make every day a healthy day.
Got the fear of missing out? Want to keep up with all the latest entertainment news and latest celebrity gossip? From the latest rumors to popping events to the newest fashion trends, here is where you get all the tea or juice when it comes to entertainment, and you get it served on time. All that and so much more on Grapevine every single Monday from 10 p.m. and a rerun every Tuesday from 2 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1. Remember, if you did not see it on Grapevine, then it most probably never happened.
No fancy meals anymore when our son is not at home?
I don't mean to bother you. I have something to ask you.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did you know my home address?
If she doesn't retake or do the makeup exam, she might not be able to graduate. I'm so anxious, and I don't know what to do, and I suddenly thought of you.
Students are all wasting their time.
They're young. Young people's time is for wasting. Challenge the limit.
I think mostly because the female mind runs in wires. It's like one whole, everything is connected to everything. And so when something happens that is similar, it's a trigger, it works as a trigger. And therefore they will remember that, oh, last time we fought about you not putting me first, and this time it's also something similar. So are you just combining the situations to make them the same thing? Yeah, I would say that's the difference, because men think in boxes. They tend to compartmentalize a lot of situations. Women don't do that. So if I was mad about you not putting away the plates, and then tomorrow you don't put away the spoon, to me you're doing the same thing over and over. To you it's different because it's a different utensil. So yeah, I don't think women forgive. I personally don't forgive and forget. I would say I forgive. I'm not so sure on the forget part.
To be honest, actually, women don't forgive and forget. I'll use an example, a very funny one. Ni kama elephant. Elephant akipita hapa, today, 2025, the next 10 years ama 25 years, he or she, the elephant, will still remember the same path. Enye alipitia. Naona, natakumbuka whatever the markings were there. So ladies, naona nimesummarize in a nutshell whatever story I was to say. As men, we may forgive and forget, and even if we remember the scenarios, ama the episodes, okay, ilishafanyika, so we have to move on. But wanawake, noma. Yeah. They tend to carry things seriously, hata kama ni kitu yenye you need to kick. Naona, okay, nilishafanya ama ilishafanyika, sorry, we move on. Them watashikilia. Even things that you're not supposed even to hold on to. Ndio maana unaona, there's the bile, majority, wako na so much bile.
Women do forgive and forget, but naona ni kama ina depend na ile kitu yenye ulimfanyia. Unaweza pata times kuna ile kitu unafanyia mtu lenye unambreak ile hati yake ile na ndani. Na kuna zile vitu zenye mtu unaweza fanya yenye mtu anaona hii ni kitu ndogo sana, hii maybe ilikuwa mistake. Akufanya akitaka, unaona. So depending on your mistake, women do forgive and forget.
For me inategemea ni nani ambaye ana deal na hiyo issue na ni situation gani. Kwa sababu kuna wale ambao inategemea amefanywa nini. Kuna kitu unaweza samehe ukasema nimesamehe, lakini katika roho yako bado umeweka. Huwezi lipiza kisasi, lakini umemsamehe tu, lakini hutaki mambo yake. Na kuna inategemea pia, kuna kitu mtu anaweza kufanya ikawa umebaki hauwezi kumsamehe. So inategemea, lakini wanawake ni ngumu kimimi. Nasema ni ngumu. Mwanaume anaweza samehe na akasema maisha, lakini mwanamke akishasema mimi nimemove on na inabaki kwa hivyo.
Personally, from my own opinion, women they forgive but they don't forget. Because whenever you see that person, you'll always remember the same thing the person did to you. But the forgiving part, yes, you'll forgive, but we never forget.
Me, I feel like females hold the grudge. So, of course, I'll act like nimekuforgive so that I can get my revenge later.
Mi naona kama wanapile vitu mingi. So like, if I wrong her once, she may forgive and forget. But so many wrongs and a pile up, alafu, she end up not forgive.
Personally, I'd say I'd literally forgive a person if you do me wrong, but I won't forget. Yeah. Because what if you did it intentionally? Should I be forgetting what you did intentionally? So no, it will be hard for me to forget.
I personally would say forgive but don't forget, because when you forget, you might be giving them the platform to do it again. And when they do it again, would you still forgive them the same way and forget again? Then it will become a cycle over and over again. Yeah.
Yes, and that what you have just been watching was just getting us into the conversation that we will be having this very moment. This is a family check right here on Good Morning Kenya. My name is Vivian Degwa, and we have a very interesting topic, as you can see on your screens. The question is, do women forgive and forget? That is the big question. When you're wronged as a woman, is it easy for you to forget? And when you forget, is it also easy for you to forgive rather? Is it easy for you to forgive? And once you forgive, is it easy for you to forget? That is what we will be touching on here today. I'm excited for this conversation, and I am joined with me I will begin with the gentleman. I'm breaking the code of women first. Let me begin with a gentleman, and we have Duncan Juma, who is a life coach. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Good morning, everyone.
And then we have Njeri Ndaru. Njeri Ndaru is a counseling psychologist and a growth coach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vivian.
Let us begin with you, Njeri. Since, you know, as you're a woman, just as I am, do women forgive and forget?
I'd say yes and no. Yes, because some do, and no, some don't. And when you talk about forgiveness, the first thing that we need to know is that for a woman, every action is tied to an emotion. So depending on how they feel about that particular action that has made them feel in that particular way, it will now determine how they will forgive if they are ready to do that, and how they will forget if also they are ready to do that.
So you're saying it's yes, no.
Yes.
It depends with the individual of the offense and also the individual.
Yes.
All right. What about you, Duncan? What's your take on this?
Well, I'm not a woman, but what I've heard is that women come on earth with a lot of extra sort of space to store things, and that's why forgiveness becomes harder. They can forgive, but forgetting becomes the exam that then they have to go through. And as Njeri rightly said, by and large, women's emotions are well developed from a younger age. You will hear a father telling the girl, "You're my angel, you're my little sweetheart." Rarely will you hear that from a man. So most times from men, only anger grows to maturity, which is a false sort of emotion, because it's almost like it's triggered by many other things. But for women, by and large, the emotions are well developed. And because of that, it's very easy to hurt them because their feelings play into it. And hence now how difficult it is then for them not just to forgive, but forget. And when you think about the quality of forgiving, again, it's lending itself to whether you need to forget or not.
Yeah. Well, you know, I want to hear this from you, Duncan. Would you say it's the opposite with men, or what's your take when it comes to men in this same thing? Do you think women forgive much easier than men, or the opposite?
No, I mean, men forgive much easier than women.
Oh, really?
In my take. It's just that there are certain cardinal sins that if you commit to a man, he's then not going to forgive you. And it is well documented. It's in the public domain that, you know, there are things men really might never come back from, especially if you commit it to them. But if you think about the amount of grievances against men by and large are easy to forgive and forget, but also because of what really primes a man's, let's say, what focus a man puts into life. A lot of times it's the economies. You know, am I able to feed my family? Am I able to take care of my family? Because then someone might encroach. Once that is sorted, there is a way in which they want to feel appreciated and all that. So it is a lot easier for a man to forgive to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But there are very cardinal sins. If you commit to a man, he's not going to forgive you.
E.g.?
Well, if you go out of the marital space as a woman, there's a higher chance because of how many interpret that. Then you're saying, I'm not good enough. Then you're saying, I'm not good. There was a reason why you left me and went to someone else. So because of that, rarely, even if a man forgives, rarely will he heal or come back from that. And because of that, it takes a lot more energy. Maybe only God can help in that space for a man to then come and say, I've forgiven you and let's move on. But we're not saying it's not possible. We're just saying it's close to impossible.
All right.
Yeah.
Jerry, when Duncan mentioned that he feels like men forgive much easier than women do, you give a smile. I don't know if it was a smile or a smirk. So just give us your opinion on that. Do you feel women forgive much easier than men, or men forgive much easier than women?
Men forgive much easier because, as I said earlier, for women it's attached to emotions. But for a man it's just an action. And you find that in our society, most of the things that hurt a woman will not hurt a man. So you find that even if you were to do something, unless it is very extreme to a man, as Duncan has said, then that is where now the problem will be. But a man will easily forgive and forget. But a woman will not forget easily because remember, the emotion is tied to the action. Yeah.
What does forgiving and forgetting look like?
So when we talk about forgiving, it is literally letting go that emotion. It looks different to different people because remember, when we talk about emotions, it comes with emotional intelligence. So when someone is more emotional intelligent, they are more likely to forgive, let go the emotion, the hurt that came with that action. So you'll find them also letting go. But also the reason why as a psychologist, I don't recommend forgetting is because there is a lesson learned from that emotion. Let's say, for example, you're in a relationship and this person, let's say, like the example that Duncan has used, has gone out of the marital bed. You know, that feeling of, am I not enough? Is this person not getting, you know, what they want from this relationship, this marriage? So the lady will not feel that you went out, you know, you have gone out of the marital space. They will feel, why am I not enough to this person? Now, when we talk about forgetting, they will not forget that you did that, but you'll find them moving from that emotion of maybe resenting you, having heartaches, crying, and all that. But it comes with time for different people. You might find some people will heal very fast, others will take a lot of time. Yeah.
All right, and maybe just to still pick up on that, Duncan, do you feel like that even when women forgive and they say, I've forgotten about it, I've forgiven you, you've done this offense, you've wronged me in this way, I have forgiven you, and I've chosen to forget about it, you know, it will come back sometime. It will be picked up, it will be put somewhere, and then it will be picked up in a later argument.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, many times, even when you argue with your significant other, a lot of times you might even think as a man, you know, this is done and over, it's gone. Only 15 years later, you realize he's just been like a crocodile waiting for the right moment to pounce
15
back.
years.
You know, I'm just giving a range. Like it never gets away, you know, it never forgets. And I think, to just reiterate what Jerry's mentioning, I think forgiveness takes, or forgiving takes on three aspects. There's that part where I say, I'm forgiving you, but let's set boundaries on what you did. Yeah, so that we agree you're not going to go outside these boundaries. There is then, I forgive you, and I'm giving you back my trust. I'm not going to hold it against you. Yeah. There's also that part where I say, I forgive you, but you know what? I can't be here. I'm letting you go, I'm walking away. And those could be aspects. But I recommend forgetting, and like what Njeri is saying, that she recommends not to forget. Many times you find that then women get to bleed on people who didn't hurt them because then they didn't forget. They come with that extra, for lack of a better word, extra baggage.
Yeah.
But in the sense that because they didn't forget, sort of they punish the wrong person, you know. And there are many men who find themselves being beaten left, right, and center. And if they do the root cause analysis, they realize their high school sweetheart hurt her, now she's punishing a gentleman who was just quietly minding their own business. And so I recommend, and essentially, I think there's, I don't know whether it's a politician, maybe Nelson Mandela, maybe a trusted politician who once said that forgiving and not forgetting is almost like taking poison and expecting your enemy to die. And I think I recommend that in the healing journey, you find spaces. I don't know how easy that will be. I'm not a woman. I'm not going to pretend that I know how that will look like. But I recommend that I feel like it's healthier and better in terms of just then forgiving and letting go and trying to forget. And the word there is trying, which is the operative word I'm using because it's not easy to forget.
Yeah. Well, you know, Njeri, I want to just speak on, you know, what Dan has said. And he's spoken about, you know, you not forgetting, you forgiving but not forgetting, or you not forgiving and still not forgetting, may cause some ripple effect on people who didn't really, you know, who didn't take part in you getting hurt. You know, as he put it, you're bleeding on someone who didn't even, you know, have play any part in you getting that cut, you know. So maybe just what role exactly does past traumas play, you know, in all of this, you know, coming, you know, as a counseling psychologist, maybe you can just, you know, look at it in that perspective of trauma, past traumas. What role does it have to play in this?
You know, when you find someone bleeding their past hurt to another person, it is because they have not healed completely. Because, as I had said earlier, letting go of the emotion, letting go of the hurt. You don't have necessarily to forget, because there are some lessons that you will learn. You know, what are the things I have to look out for to avoid being hurt like previously? Maybe what did I miss on my part while having this friendship or this relationship? And what can I do better? Because when we talk about therapy and healing and counseling from trauma, it is not about the other person, it is about you. So what can you do better? What can you look at in other friendships, in other relationships, so that you don't make the mistake from the previous relationship? And you find that most of the time as ladies, we tend to move on very fast, for lack of a better word, because we are very social, we are very vocal. Therefore, we find the next person or the next friend to talk about the previous hurt, the hurt that we've had. And sometimes, because we find solace in this friendship or in this relationship, we try to sweep feelings under the carpet. Now, because you have found this comfort, you have found, you know, this safe space, you forget to deal with the past trauma, with the past feelings, because you have already found solace here. So by the time, you know, you start seeing this person wants to do like the previous person did, then you start flaring up, you start reacting, not remembering that this is a unique person. They also act independently, not like the other person. So you start now reacting to this person. They might not necessarily be doing the exact things the other person did, but, you know, as people, we have that defense mechanism. We either fight or we flight, we run away. So now you start fighting the battle that is not even there, and this other person is totally innocent. And you find that because also you have found this solace, you are likely not to communicate your needs and your expectations to this person, whether in a relationship, whether in a friendship. So because most of the time you find that ladies come into common ground for relationships, especially romantic, because of hurt. You know, you have found this person that was hurt, both of you are healing, you have that connection, that spark. So you will start on a ground of healing and finding these common common ground, but you will not necessarily now talk about how both of you are having boundaries and setting boundaries and what your expectations are from each other. Yeah.
So what's the best way to go about you not bleeding on people who didn't hurt you? Yeah.
Heal totally.
Heal totally.
Yes.
Just heal.
Yes,
Yeah.
just heal.
Does healing equal to forgetting?
Not really, because as I said earlier, it depends with an individual. And you find that most of the time when you are completely healed, you will forget. Because when we talk about forgiving, let me give an example of tomatoes. It is like, buying ripe tomatoes in the market. When you forget to take them out of the bag and you come back to town with the same bag for a whole week, they will start smelling. So you letting that hurt go with time is like discarding those tomatoes. Even if you wash the bag, there will be that smell, but as time goes by, the smell will go away. And when you heal now completely, in the aspect of that smell, you find yourself forgetting, because it is about you, not the other person. Of course, there is that struggle of trying to let go, this person did this to me, I am very disappointed. As some ladies say, men are dogs, which I believe should not be the case. But with time, you'll find just forgetting and being out there in a space where you are giving everybody a chance.
Yeah. Well, we got to speak to some people in the streets, just to get to have their feel on this, and I would love for you to maybe respond to some of them. But before we get to listen in on that, maybe what does it take for one to forget? Just from your point of view, what do you feel is the best way to go about forgetting after you forgive someone?
Well, I think, we're not entirely saying you should forget, but I think there must be steps that allow you to start forgetting, or to start, sort of putting it not in the front burner, so to say. Data on the street, for example, there are scenarios where, for example, you leave your husband because he went outside the home.
Yeah, that's cheating.
And, let's call it that.
Infidelity.
Okay? Infidelity. And then you realize maybe in your o'clock, maybe you may not get a younger person, or, then later on, you're having an affair with another married man. So the question is, would it have been easier to try and work it out? And especially where maybe if you have an issue with your man and the man is available or present to be beaten, and then he's able to say, you know what, maybe we can forge forward. Those could be opportunities that we may not want to overlook, so that our healing is wholesome, especially when you're dealing with the person who hurt you. However, we know that it's not easy to forgive and then forget in the context that maybe there's unrepentance, there's, because really part of being forgiven totally sometimes has to do with you being stripped, especially if it's now, you're talking about a lady talking to a man. The man has to nyenyekea, has to really be beaten down to pulp before the forgiveness is ushered to them. And sometimes from a man's perspective, maybe power games may not allow. You ask yourself, if I finally submit myself to the lowest of levels because I now want to be forgiven, what does that mean for me? Will I still be a man after this conversation? And I think those are spaces that then must allow women to start saying, you know what, maybe if I forgive, I can also start my journey to forget. And not in the sense of you're not saying it didn't happen, but you're also saying that you're not allowing it to be on your front burner, because there are people you meet and day one, you can tell they're going through so much. Then you realize this happened 5 years ago, 15 years ago, because it's still very present. Of course, from Jerry's perspective, maybe it's unprocessed, there's that denial phase that could come with it, or maybe depression that has kicked in because of betrayal that came with it. But at the same time, there has to be that part of acceptance that where you say, you know what, it happened. And then the other thing is, part of why we need to forgive and forget, part of it is because we're not getting married to angels, we're not getting into a relationship with angels. These guys have the potential to be used by the devil or any other thing. And because of that, if they are willing to come back, I mean, even when you think about it,
it's giving the Shetani.
Yeah. And many men tell the truth that in Shetani and wafanya your kitu. And yeah, actually I believe, and maybe Jerry will correct me, there's a Bible verse that says, pray for those who persecute you. And I think largely I feel like it was written for women, but also when they say, do not keep a multitude of sins, do not keep a record of sins. I think also it was directed in the journey to try and allow us to forgive as many times as it is, but as long as there's willingness to change and there's those corrective attitude adjustments that say, I'm going to be different, or I'm going to behave differently, or this is how I'll play around.
Yeah. Njeri, your take on that? Yeah.
I lack words to to comment on that, but what I can say is that for you to be forgiven, you have to take initiative. And I'm speaking this from a woman perspective. You know, women don't expect you to say that, you know, it will never be repeated again. Actually, we don't want to hear words. We want to see actions. And what do you do after, you know, hurting maybe your sister, your girlfriend, your wife? What are the steps you take towards helping her heal? Because that is your responsibility as the person that has hurt her. Or if you want now to work on that particular thing that has caused her hurt. Because you find that men are like, as tumeongelelea hii kitu imeisha. But for a lady, it is not that simple. You know, a lady takes time to process things, and you'll find her bringing it again and again and again, even, you know, maybe after a year. That shows that she has not healed completely from it. Therefore, you have
the same thing.
You have to get back to the table, listen to her, understand her, not only, you know, hearing and saying, yeah, naongeanga tu mingi na hii maneno tulimaliza, you know, get to understand her point of view and now work towards that. You can also ask the question, what can I do to help you or help us move from this kind of situation? Yeah.
Now, for those who keep repeating the same mistake, I've forgiven you this time, you know, and then next time you still do this very same thing. You know, it's like a repeated thing. It's a repeated, let me call it offense, over and over. I forgive you. After a while, then you get back to doing the same thing. Now, where to go from there?
I think let me use science. They say nature abhors a vacuum. Usually there could be motivations as to why this person did X, Y, and Z. And I'm not standing in their space to say they should continue doing that. But I think it's about, if you talk about, and Njeri has alluded to it, there has to be a change that fills in to this gap. But also, Njeri has hinted to a fact that, you know, when it keeps being brought up again and again to denote that healing has not taken place, sometimes it's for a man, there's a part where you actually get tired of hearing the same, and you can actually zone off because then you don't know what to do. Because many times men don't know what to do with the emotions of women. Like it's not very easy, and maybe training needs to happen. But if someone keeps doing again and again, maybe that just could be God telling you, let my people go.
Like, take your leave now. Your take on the same for someone who just keeps forgiving, or maybe let me ask you the question being, when is it now worth you not forgiving and forgetting? When is it worth you just saying, okay, now this is it, I'll take my leave. Maybe I'll forgive, but I forgive you, but I'm not here no more.
That depends with each person individually, because you have to get to that space where you know what is the limit for you as a person. Even if there is that forgiving and forgetting and trying to work things out, you have to get to that place where you just for the sake of your mental health and peace of mind, you say that I have to let this go. And as much as you'd want to help the other person, if it is draining you, especially emotionally and mentally, then I'd say leave. That is from a professional perspective, because sometimes you just have to let the other person work themselves out and find healing. Because sometimes you find, especially if someone has, you know, experienced trauma growing up and from previous relationships, they will tend not to let go and not to understand the other person's perspective. So you just taking time and taking the back burner and letting that person first sort themselves out. If you are ready to continue working on both of you, then let that person first heal and you know, give them space to be themselves and to heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think now it's time for us to get to listen into some of the perspectives that people got to, that we got from people in the streets concerning the same. If you can just listen to some of them and then you get to respond to them.
Mostly because the female mind runs in wires. It's like one, everything is connected to everything. And so when something happens that is similar, it's a trigger, it works as a trigger. And therefore they will remember that, oh, last time we fought about you not putting me first, and this time it's also something similar. So are you just combining the situations to make them the same thing? Yeah, I would say that's the difference, because men think in boxes. They tend to compartmentalize a lot of situations. Women don't do that. So if I was mad about you not putting away the plates, and then tomorrow you don't put away the spoon, to me you're doing the same thing over and over. To you it's different because it's a different utensil. So yeah, I don't think women forgive. I personally don't forgive and forget. I would say I forgive. I'm not so sure on the forget part.
To be honest, actually, women don't forgive and forget. I'll use an example, a very funny one. Ni kama elephant. Elephant akipita hapa, today, 2025, the next 10 years ama 25 years, he or she, the elephant, will still remember the same path. Enye alipitia. Nona, natakumbuka whatever the markings were there. So ladies, nona nimesummarize in a nutshell whatever story I was to say. As men, we may forgive and forget, and even if we remember the scenarios, ama the episodes, okay, ilishafanyika, so we have to move on. But wanawake, noma. Yeah. They tend to carry things seriously, hata kama ni kitu yenye you need to kick. Naona, okay, nilishafanya ama ilishafanyika, sorry, we move on. Them watashikilia. Even things that you're not supposed even to hold on to. Ndio maana unaona, there's the bile, majority, wako na so much bile.
Women do forgive and forget, but naona ni kama ina depend na ile kitu yenye ulimfanyia. Unaweza pata times kuna ile kitu unafanyia mtu lenye unambreak ile hati yake ile na ndani. Na kuna zile vitu zenye mtu unaweza fanya yenye mtu anaona hii ni kitu ndogo sana, hii maybe ilikuwa mistake. Akufanya akitaka, unaona. So depending on your mistake, women do forgive and forget.
For me inategemea ni nani ambaye ana deal na hiyo issue na ni situation gani. Kwa sababu kuna wale ambao inategemea amefanywa nini. Kuna kitu unaweza samehe ukasema nimesamehe, lakini katika roho yako bado umeweka. Huwezi lipiza kisasi, lakini umemsamehe tu, lakini hutaki mambo yake. Na kuna inategemea pia, kuna kitu mtu anaweza kufanya ikawa umebaki hauwezi kumsamehe. So inategemea, lakini wanawake ni ngumu kimimi. Nasema ni ngumu. Mwanaume anaweza samehe na akasema maisha, lakini mwanamke akishasema mimi nimemove on na inabaki kwa hivyo.
Personally, from my own opinion, women they forgive but they don't forget. Because whenever you see that person, you'll always remember the same thing the person did to you. But the forgiving part, yes, you'll forgive, but we never forget.
Me, I feel like females hold the grudge. So, of course, I'll act like nimekuforgive so that I can get my revenge later.
Mi naona kama wana pile vitu mingi. So, like, if I wrong her once, she may forgive and forget. But so many wrongs, and a pile up, alafu, she end up not forgive.
Personally, I'd say I'd literally forgive a person if you do me wrong, but I won't forget. Yeah. Because what if you did it intentionally? Should I be forgetting what you did intentionally? So no, it will be hard for me to forget.
I personally would say forgive, but don't forget. Because when you forget, you might be giving them the platform to do it again. And when they do it again, would you still forgive them the same way and forget again? Then it will become a cycle over and over again. Yeah.
Hi, now judging from the statements that we've just gotten to hear from some of the people that we got to speak to, it's like so evident that most of them are agreeing with women do not forgive and forget. You know, I think it was only 1 or 2 people who said, yes, a woman can forgive and forget. Most of them are saying, yeah, I'll forgive but not forget. There's the gentleman who actually compared women to elephants, you know, that if ilipita hapa leo, 10 years later it will still remember. So it's the same case with women. But now there's one that I'd love you to maybe comment on, and you can also just comment on whichever that you feel you want to touch on. There's the lady who said, I will forgive, yes, but I will stay there waiting for for the best time for me to also revenge.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's fine. You know, I think there has to be a conversation slightly beyond forgive and forget to what damage not forgiving and forgetting does to a person. And when you look at the level of bitterness and all that, especially when we live in a world where right now everyone is focused on putting food on the table and all that. So we may not be in a space where we are attending to the psychological issues that are happening in our space. And I think Jerry will attest to this, that there are many more cases, even children coming maybe for counseling, and you just notice it's because the parents are not actively available because they're busy. And so while we can say it's okay to wait for that revenge, the question would be, what are you, you know, it's almost like you're building bile block by block, and it's eating you up. There's an effect on yourself that this is doing, and your outlook to life. Because it's almost like you've picked a world view that, you know what, he's done this for me, I must wait for them at some point and clobber them. The reality of it is, the deeper your friendships, the bigger the size of the betrayal that it will be. And because of that, there has to be need also for capacity to build in anticipating that the person I live with or the person in my life have the ability to betray me. And so you preempt and prepare so that when it happens, maybe you get hurt, but not as hurtful as it. But when you now say, tit for tat, let me wait for my sweet revenge, you never know, maybe the sweet revenge might actually backfire on you. Or you will notice that maybe he will hurt you some more. Are you going to keep preparing for it? So it's not a very clear-cut answer, but I feel like it's taking a posture that almost you're self-cutting yourself with the view that the other person, think of it this way, many times if you leave someone in a relationship, there's like a feeling in you that that person should suffer in life, you know, bad things, and do this should knock them over, you know. Then you realize God has blessed them, they're actually doing well, looks like you are the obstacle, you know, so what happens to you? So I think we must be in a space where to say also, you know what, part of the cards is not saying I'll wait for my sweet revenge, but more importantly to let go from my own part and say, you know what, it's happened, and perhaps I give them a chance to be the best version of themselves without necessarily saying I have to pay back. Because really, how much damage is payback enough to heal you or bring sanity or normalcy to your end?
Yeah, and actually, you know, just from you saying that sometimes after you leave someone who's hurt you, you expect the worst to happen to them. And, you know, the people who have had this time and again that life is not a Nigerian movie and God is not from your village. So just move on, stop waiting for karma. Jerry, what's your take on that bit of revenging, whereby you've forgiven this person, you've chosen to, we're speaking about a romantic relationship, you've forgiven them, you've chosen to remain in the relationship, but you're just there because you're waiting for time for you to revenge?
I'd say it starts with self-love. If you love yourself, you would not stay in a place where you'll continue getting hurt. And we have been hurt so much that we want to continue to stay in hurt without realizing that at the end of it, us will continue being hurt. And sometimes you find that you might be wanting to revenge, yet it was maybe a one-time thing. Let's say, for example, someone, let's say a man you're in a relationship with, flirted with a lady in your presence. And it's not his character to do that. It was that one particular time. And you're now planning on how to revenge. And maybe the person later on realized that I did wrong to my lady. So he apologized, and you're like, okay, and you are planning revenge. And literally this person has already seen their mistake and has worked on that. And you find that sometimes we lose a good person because of that. And also, for how long are you willing to wait to continue, you know, staying and putting that toxicity inside you? Because when we talk about emotions, it not only affects our mind, it also affects our body. That's why you find some people in toxic relationships will have ulcers, high blood pressure, because of, you know, piling up things. And you'll go to hospital and the doctor will tell you, punguza stress. So how much are you willing, how far are you willing to go? And also there's the lady that talked about spoons and cups, you know, after your man has had a meal, anaziacha tu hapo. You know, they are the basics of relationships when you talk. What do I do, or what am I supposed to do? And I'd speak about men. Men, I don't know why they don't get it. Because when your lady tells you respectfully, tukikula, tunapeleka vyombo hapa ama tufanye hivi, you know, it's about you too, not about what people say out there. And remember, if this person is really someone that you want to build your future with, then you have now to make those rules work for the both of you. And also, there's a lady that said, I don't know whether it is a lady that said, it depends on what the other person does. Yes, it depends with the person. And you'll find that ladies will forgive very easily the first times, but when you consecutively repeat that mistake, now that is where the problem comes in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to end this conversation. It was such a good conversation, and I'll just allow you to give your last remarks in very few words.
Yeah, I think we have talked about forgiving and forgetting, and I think it's in our own interest to not just forgive and forget, but to learn from whatever experiences we go through and realize that many times when we don't forgive, it is on our end. There's only what we have control over, and sometimes the other person we don't have much control over. And it's our wish that then they will come to our world and be able to see what we are seeing. But even when they don't, when you prioritize yourself, a healthy you, a whole you is more beneficial to not only the two of you, but also to the society at large.
All right, thank you.
To the ladies, I would say, love yourself. It does not matter the past that you have been, but love yourself, because a lady is a nurturer. Whether it's to your children, to your parents, to the people around you at your workplace, a lady is a nurturer. And I'm not putting pressure on you, but you really need to work on yourself, because we are raising sons and boys, we are mentoring boys, and they need to learn from us as much as they are learning from the men. Also, seek help when you need it. Whenever you have that thought of, ama niende kwa psychologist, or I can go for therapy, I can go for counseling. Do that, because it is your body telling you that you need to. And in reference to that, I offer my services both virtually and in person. Especially if you're in Nairobi, there is no excuse of you not seeking help, because we are available in CBD, Ngong Road and Mombasa Road. So take time to love yourself. And loving yourself does not mean, especially now in Valentine's season, you know, buying yourself flowers and getting chocolate from from your boyfriend or husband. Going for therapy is also a form of self-love. Yeah.
All right, okay. There's a message that has come in, but we need to finish. Maybe just to read it. Do men really learn from past mistakes? Or we can have that as our next conversation.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah?
But the short answer is yes, we do.
Okay.
Just how we apply the lessons.
All right, we can have that as our next conversation. Thank you so much to every one of you who has been tuned in to Good Morning Kenya. That was an interesting conversation. And remember, it doesn't need to end here. You can continue this conversation on our social media platforms, and you can find us. Our handle is at KBC Channel 1, or you can find me at my personal handles. That is at Vivian Ndegwa. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll do this again tomorrow, same time and place, God willing. Goodbye.
Technology has become a crucial part of our society. Without technological advancements, so much of our everyday lives would be drastically different. As technology develops, it strives to fulfill the changing needs of society. This means that technology exists to help us achieve the things that we wouldn't be able to achieve without it. Take on Tech looks at the advantages and downside of technological innovation in a world that is becoming increasingly dependent on new digital technologies. Every Monday at 10:30 p.m.
Mambo gani haya? Mambo kama mtu mfupi kama kitunguu. Anaona round mwangalie.
Sasa huyu amenitoa kwa samba kuja kunitrip na naniweka lafu kuna watu. Umakasereka?
No, stakabadhi ya kupita kwa airport kama una travel.
Sema turubena nyakirajo.
Luvena.
Nyakirajo.
Nyakilalo.
Kabisa sasa mimi nataka ile nguo. Ukishaivaa, nataka na kurekodi kwa video napiga. Vivian, sio that the concern. Wajui,
Sorry gani wewe na nyatia natoka kama na nyemelea.
Pole. Nene.